Hey, beautiful people. Hope that you guys had an amazing day. It is early in the morning, and I'm going to start you off with a little bit of news, okay?
Leaders for the G7 summit. White House correspondent Liz Landers begins our coverage.
Today, all eyes were on the quiet French alpine town of Evian for the annual G7 summit. President Trump arrived to again herald the news of a weekend ceasefire deal, which he says will bring an end to the U.S. war with Iran.
The deal's all signed, and the strait is already partially opened.
Alongside French President Emmanuel Macron today, Trump lauded it as a major step forward.
A lot of great things are going to happen in the Middle East right now, and very importantly, the oil is plummeting down, and the stock market is shooting up like a rocket. And the main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. They fully agreed to that with strong policing powers, and they won't have a nuclear weapon, which is what it was all about.
Let me start also by welcoming the agreement reached between the United States and Iran.
World leaders attending the summit were cautiously optimistic about the agreement, brokered by Pakistan and Qatar. The text of the memorandum has not been released, though a senior U.S. official said it would be within 24 to 48 hours. Officials say it would bring shipping through the Strait of Hormuz back to pre-war levels, adding that the priority will be on heavy tankers with oil and gas. Last night, President Trump proclaimed, quote, "Ships of the world, start your engines, let the oil flow." But a U.S. military advisory to merchant ships warned the blockade will remain in place, quote, pending execution of the deal.
Over the past 24 hours, we have witnessed major developments.
Today, a spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry emphasized additional terms.
The release of Iran's foreign or restricted assets, alongside the issue of compensation for damages, are two important economic matters. The American side is committed to taking action in both cases.
Vice President J.D. Vance reiterated an ultimatum on CBS this morning. Iran will only get their side of the deal, including a $300 billion reconstruction fund, if they cooperate.
When people say that billions of dollars of assets will be released, that's not true. What is true is that Iran will have a much better and much more prosperous future if they meet the obligations they make in this agreement. We'll, of course, see. That's one of the things we're going to work out in the technical talks that will follow the official signing on Friday.
A senior U.S. official said that the amount of Iranian assets unfrozen by the United States or any other country remains at zero. Another condition, peace in Lebanon. Iran says the memorandum calls for, quote, respect of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. But since the announcement, Israel launched another drone strike there, killing one person. And Israel's defense minister said the military will not withdraw from land already seized in Lebanon. One senior U.S. official says that the Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon is not a condition of the agreement between the U.S. and Iran, adding that if Iran does not, quote, control the militant group Hezbollah and that group attacks Israel, they will, quote, have the right to defend themselves and respond. At a news conference this afternoon, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doubled down.
We will need to continue to be vigilant, to remain strong and determined, to defend ourselves as necessary. This is true not only against Iran, but against Iran's terrorist arms, which we have struck in an unprecedented manner.
Still, news of the deal brought hope to more than the 1 million people in southern Lebanon, whose lives have been uprooted by the fighting. Today, for the first time in months, some families returned to where their homes once stood, devastated, but at the same time anxious to rebuild.
This used to be our home, our childhood home where we grew up, and now it's gone. At the end of the day, this is our country, and we must return even if it's destroyed. We will return to rubble and sand. It's better than being displaced.
As the terms of the formal deal are hammered out in weeks to come, the U.S. military presence in the region will stay at current levels, according to one official, who says the administration hopes to draw those 50,000 military personnel down soon, but it's not happening yet. The Vice President, Jared Kushner, and Steve Witkoff are all expected at the signing ceremony on Friday, in addition to Iranian officials, according to a senior U.S. official. Just to underscore the uncertainty here with this memorandum of understanding, the president told reporters today in France that the text would be released by Friday, while senior U.S. officials who briefed reporters earlier today told us it would be between 24 and 48 hours that we would see that.
Liz, as you mentioned, President Trump landed in France for the G7 summit, but not before last night he attended this unprecedented ultimate fighting competition cage match. You've done a lot of reporting on this. Tell us about that.
It was a spectacle at the White House last night. It marked President Trump's 80th birthday. This is the second year in a row that he has had a big celebration. Last year, it was that military parade near the White House. And there were a number of notable attendees who were there last night, including David Ellison, the CEO of Paramount, who had the exclusive streaming rights to the fight last night. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, Pope Leo's brother. I was asked by ambassadors in the last few weeks if I knew how to get tickets. That's how hot this was to try to get there here in DC. There were also military personnel who were in attendance there last night. And there were military assets like the Blue Angel fighter jets that flew over the White House twice last night. As someone who covers the White House, I was amazed to see how they staged some of these very formal rooms and the whole campus really into this UFC fight night. The diplomatic room, where you usually see heads of state come and go. That was a staging area where fighters were waiting before they walked out onto the South Lawn. The Eisenhower Executive Office building was a sort of warm-up area and locker room for some of these fighters as well. And the fights themselves went into the wee hours of the night. One of the fighters, though, sort of drummed up controversy with some inappropriate and offensive comments about the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, saying that, quote, she was a man. He presented President Trump with a chain. This was Josh Hokett, and then said these comments shortly after. Dana White, the head of UFC, was asked about this by Time magazine, and he said in a text message, I understand that the Obamas are public figures, but I'm completely against saying nasty and false things about people's families. Everyone knows my position on free speech, but I hate that kind of nonsense. White also said that he is not expected to stage anything like this again at the White House because he can't afford to do it.
Incredible event last night. I also want to ask you about this other controversy, and that is the legal fight over the removal of President Trump's name from the Kennedy Center. Tell us about that.
This has been a controversy since the Trump-appointed board added his name in December to the facade and to all the branding around the Kennedy Center. There's been a legal fight that has been playing out since, and a judge decided at the end of May that the board acted beyond their authority and said that they had to remove his name. I got this memo a few days after that judge's decision, and it came from the general counsel of the Kennedy Center, and it was sent to all the staff there, and it directed them to take the president's name off of all the signage there, off of their website. And it said that everything, including the brochures and the signage in front, had to be removed by June 12th. That was on Friday. The board of the Kennedy Center filed this late motion. It was rejected by the judge. So Friday night, there was this spectacle around the Kennedy Center. People were watching, and there were tarps and scaffolding that went up, and the president's name was removed from the Kennedy Center on the late hours of Friday into the early hours of Saturday there, but it was not visible to the public when it came down. So I asked the Kennedy Center about this tarp still being up there. The Kennedy Center spokesperson told me that the scaffolding and tarp will remain up as crews address maintenance needs of the marble and the soffit panel. William.
Liz Landers, thank you so much.
Of course.
The memorandum signed by the U.S. and Iran has little to do with the third combatant in this war, Israel. Top officials there expressed dismay and even derision for the deal. And as we reported, a key part of what is not in this initial agreement, the Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. There, Israel continues to fight Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militant group, despite a ceasefire that neither side is honoring. Now, Israelis say they are caught in the middle between a bad deal and constant fighting. Here's Stephanie Tsai.
The distant shrieks in the sky from incoming rockets, the air raid sirens, the trudge to below-ground shelters becoming almost mundane in northern Israel. Israel says nearly 30 of its soldiers and 4 civilians have died in fighting with Hezbollah. Across the border in Lebanon, nearly 4,000 have been killed. The cycle of violence has become all too familiar, and it's unclear whether the framework agreement for peace struck over the weekend between the U.S. and Iran will end it.
I'm not very happy about it. I think it will last maybe 2 years until Trump is ending his term, and then we'll go back to the same thing.
The exact terms of President Trump's deal weren't public before many Israelis had already formed their opinions. The agreement doesn't resolve many Israeli concerns about Iran's nuclear and missile programs.
It's only American interest here, and it's for the matter of national security of Israel. This is the worst agreement that could ever be done.
I don't think the agreement is a good agreement, and I think that trying to sign these kind of agreements with the bully of the neighborhood is not going to bring us long-lasting peace.
Top Israeli officials also made their opinions known.
Regarding Lebanon, we have created a buffer zone, and we will remain there as long as necessary. Iran wanted us to withdraw from there, but that did not happen. Do you know why it didn't happen? Because I stood very, very firm.
Defense Minister Israel Katz posting on X, "We will have the ability to act independently to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons and will not withdraw from the security zones in Lebanon." This month, Iran launched a barrage of missiles toward Israel after the IDF attacked the suburbs of Beirut and Iran's proxy Hezbollah. The IDF has now made its deepest incursion into Lebanon in decades, destroying broad sections of the south and displacing more than 1 million people.
There is still fighting with Hezbollah, still fighting with Iran. Hamas still hasn't gone away.
Ilan Levy is a former spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government.
The ballistic missile threat, the nuclear threat are a shadow of what they were in the past. But it's like taking a round of antibiotics and finishing before the end. The Iranian regime is still on its feet, nursing its wounds, vowing revenge, and remains dangerous.
He says Netanyahu is trying to salvage his legacy.
The Prime Minister promised total victory, and we're nowhere near that at the moment.
As the military campaign drags on, Netanyahu's support has fallen.
We have been living for years under threats caused by the belligerence of our government. So I hope it is a lesson also for Israeli citizens that military force mainly creates problems.
In the seaside town of Nahariya, just 6 miles from the Lebanese border, tourism has taken a hit. It's a quiet summer, but residents are vocal and divided on how much Trump is influencing Netanyahu.
Trump can say whatever he wants. Don't bomb here, bomb there. If we need to carry out strikes, we'll carry out strikes anywhere in the world.
I felt like it's the same game that's always being played. They start, they continue, then they stop. Daddy Trump says stop, so they stop. Daddy Trump says continue, so they continue. And we have a yes man, Netanyahu, who does what he's told, and we are learning to live with that.
But many Israelis support military action against Hezbollah and Iran, even while questioning Netanyahu's ability to secure Israel. In a poll earlier this month, 61% of Israelis said Netanyahu should not run in the next round of national elections slated for early fall. But the prime minister announced today that he would. While Netanyahu prepares for another election cycle, Israelis prepare for another cycle of insecurity that Ilan Levy says is unacceptable.
That's why it is critical not to accept a new normal in which the Iranian regime thinks it can call the shots.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Stephanie Tsai.
So where does all this leave U.S.-Israeli relations and the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? For that, we turn again to Aaron David Miller. He's served in both Democratic and Republican administrations trying to negotiate. He's now senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for and the opinion of its leaders. Give us a sense of how they are seeing the announcement of this fledgling deal.
I mean, I think there's grave concern, understandably, because on the issue of Iran's nuclear program, the U.S. is Mars and the Israelis are Venus. It does pose an existential threat. And where you sit has a lot to do with where you stand. So there's a lot of concern. that this war of choice that the president launched in conjunction with his Israeli partner, and I must say, you'd have to go back to World War II to find the kind of seamless interaction of two militaries engaged in such an extraordinarily challenging and comprehensive military campaign. So on one level, you have this sort of seamless military integration and cooperation. On the other, however, you have a growing rift, it seems to me. If a U.S. ally is defined as someone who has a high coincidence of interests, shared common values, and a strong base of domestic support, in all three of these foundations, there's more stress than at any time I've seen. And you have a president, Donald Trump, who has said things about an Israeli prime minister and has allowed his private conversations, some profanity-laced, but in the main mocking the prime minister's judgment, basically to go public. This is unprecedented. So Trump has enormous leverage because of the elections. Trump cannot elect Benjamin Netanyahu, but unless he campaigns actively for him, Netanyahu's vulnerabilities, and there are some, are going to expand exponentially. And Lebanon may well be part of the problem right now.
And from the Israeli perspective, the details that are trickling out about this deal feel like what? A capitulation, giving away the farm too early?
It's not just from an Israeli point of view. This was a war of choice. And I worked and voted for Republicans and Democrats. This is a war of choice in which the administration overestimated its own capacity and underestimated the capacity of its adversary. And as a consequence, this war of choice is leading to what I would describe to you as a flawed, I'll say peace in quotes, a flawed piece of necessity. Iran is not going to sever its relations with its proxies. There aren't going to be any restrictions on ballistic missiles. The regime has not only survived, it's weaponized geography. And it's demonstrated that it does not have to match the vaunted power, formidable power of the Israeli and American militaries. It can expand horizontally. And it's done that by attacking key Gulf states. And again, by demanding, the straits will be open, no doubt. But I suspect Iran wants some measure of control and sovereignty, whether it's tolls 60 days later or navigation fees. They're not going to give this up. So on balance, a normal human would have to ask themselves a basic question. Despite all of the tactical military achievements, the degradation of ballistic missiles, drones, all of that, where is the strategic gain, not just for Israel? Where is the strategic gain for the United States? If the administration can produce, recapture diplomatically, either diluting or exporting out of the country, the 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium, be a big gain. If they could get the Iranians to agree to a moratorium on enrichment for a long period of time, the Iranians say 20, or Trump said 20 years, the Iranians, I think, say 10, it'd be a notable achievement, but the Iranians have negotiated for decades. They play this game a lot better than we do. So on balance, I think it's not just a strategic defeat for Israel. Frankly, I'm much more concerned that it's a strategic defeat for us.
Aaron David Miller of the Carnegie Endowment, always appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
In the day's other headlines, California Governor Gavin Newsom says the Trump administration is using the Justice Department to investigate him and his wife, saying the move is politically motivated.
Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit.
Newsom says that in recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of friends and former employees looking for records of an unspecified crime. The Democrat also likened himself to former FBI Director James Comey and other Trump foes who have been targeted by the DOJ. But a source tells the NewsHour that there are at least 2 ongoing probes into those close to Newsom, which originated with prosecutors in California, not in Washington, D.C. The U.S. military says a B-52 Stratofortress bomber crashed shortly after takeoff in California's Mojave Desert today. Aerial footage from the scene shows smoking wreckage near Edwards Air Force Base, which is about 100 miles north of Los Angeles. Officials at the base wrote on social media that, quote, emergency crews immediately responded to the scene and the situation is ongoing. There was no immediate word on whether anyone was hurt. The B-52 is typically crewed by 5 people and is a long-range bomber that first entered service in the 1950s. In Missouri, federal investigators were on the scene today of a plane crash that killed 12 people, including the pilot. Authorities say the plane was taking off for a skydiving trip yesterday when it went down soon after takeoff in Butler, Missouri, which is about 70 miles south of Kansas City. A local official says the pilot may have been trying to reach a nearby road when the aircraft stalled and crashed. The company that operates the plane says the local skydiving community is in shock. As of this afternoon, authorities had not released the names of the victims. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 11 people were killed and more than 50 others injured by Russian attacks overnight. In Kyiv, explosions could be heard as strikes hit a number of apartment buildings. A cathedral in one of the city's most revered religious sites was also set ablaze. It's part of an 11th century monastery complex, which is one of the most sacred landmarks in Eastern Orthodox Christianity. The head of the complex called for those responsible to be, quote, condemned forever.
This is one of the most renowned examples of Ukraine's cultural and historical heritage that Russia is targeting precisely to destroy it. In doing so, it is not only destroying Ukrainian heritage, but also world heritage, posing a challenge to the entire world.
Also today, Ukraine formally opened the first phase of membership talks with the European Union. Officials called it a Rubicon moment for Ukrainians, as that country's leadership tries to further tie its fate to the West. Health officials working in the Democratic Republic of the Congo say the true scale of the Ebola outbreak is still unknown. That assessment comes a day after authorities there said at least 181 people have now died, making this the 3rd deadliest Ebola outbreak on record. And the situation is growing even more tense. Security forces fired warning shots and tear gas yesterday to scatter a crowd that was trying to take the body of a suspected victim. Health workers say they face distrust from local communities as they try to contain this outbreak. The British government announced a sweeping social media ban today for teenagers under 16 years old. The plan would limit access to platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and is expected to take effect next year. The UK joins a growing list of countries implementing such bans, including Australia, Brazil, and Canada. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the measure is aimed at protecting young people from harmful content and will improve the quality of life for kids.
It will make a huge difference. It will make our children safer. It will make our children happier, and will give them more time, more security, more freedom to grow up, more opportunity.
Social media companies fired back today, with YouTube saying in a statement that the ban would drive young people to, quote, less safe services. Fox is buying streaming pioneer Roku in a $22 billion deal. The agreement gives Fox access to the nearly 100 million households that use Roku's streaming platform worldwide. In a statement, Fox and Roku said the combined company would be the 3rd largest player in the U.S. television market, as measured by viewership. Meantime, on Wall Street today, stocks rallied on news of that tentative deal between the U.S. and Iran. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose nearly 470 points on the day. The Nasdaq jumped nearly 800 points, or more than 3%. The S&P 500 also started the week sharply higher. And Abdullah Ibrahim, the world-renowned South African jazz pianist, has died. His song Manenberg is considered an unofficial anthem of his country's fight against apartheid. Ibrahim famously played at the 1994 inauguration of Nelson Mandela, who called him, quote, our Mozart. Known as Dollar Brand before converting to Islam in the 1960s, Ibrahim's career spanned 8 decades. He recorded more than 70 albums and worked with legends like Duke Ellington. In 2019, he was named a jazz master by the National Endowment for the Arts. His family says he died in Germany after a short illness. Abdullah Ibrahim was 91 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, our Politics Monday team, Amy Walter and Jasmine Wright, break down the latest political headlines. As President Trump promotes his so-called deal with Iran, he's threatening to derail congressional efforts to renew a key spy power, and yet another of his foes says they are being investigated by his Justice Department. It is Politics Monday, and Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter and Jasmine Wright of Notice are both here to break it all down. Tamara Keith is away today. So nice to see you both.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Jasmine, about this Iran deal, we still don't know all the details, critical things about what happens with Iran's nuclear material, whether the strait really does reopen. Is the U.S. really going to give over hundreds of billions of dollars to the Iranians? That said, is the White House just going to declare victory and hope that the details work out fine later?
I think you're seeing them start that process now, William. You've seen J.D. Vance, the vice president, who is leading these negotiations. You've already seen him on CBS, ABC, CNN. Maybe by the end of the week, we'll see him on PBS, going out and setting the narrative of what the deal is before the text actually comes out. Because you're right, we haven't seen the text. We haven't seen what this memorandum of understanding is that even gets you to the next phase of technical talks that U.S. officials say will last for 60 days, where they nail out all of those really hard details. I've talked to experts who say that is actually those critical conversations are going to be the hard part, not what they've gotten here. Now, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, obviously that has been something that the White House has been focused on and talking a lot about. They say that it's going to open somewhere between Friday and 2 weeks from then. We may not have the full amount of ships that have been going through since then, but that really has been, I think, the number one thing that they've been focused on. Yes, they've been talking about Iran's nuclear ambition, but they need that strait open to not just revigorate the base here, but get those gas prices to where they need to be come November. So I think that you're going to see a lot of focus on that. And once that's open, they can figure out those other little pesky details.
Yeah.
Well,
That sounds right, because the number one concern, if you're up for re-election this year as a Republican, there was talk at one point of the straits being closed through Labor Day, which means as we go into the election season, we're looking at $4 and $5 gas prices. That is devastating.
Calamitous.
Absolutely. So if you're a Republican looking at an unpopular war and the potential for high gas prices into an election, the fact that the straits could open in 2 weeks or less is good news. At the same time, it is not going to suddenly bring inflation back to a place where voters feel like the cost of living has been handled. And I think the challenge all along for Republicans this election is the president seems more interested in his own agenda than in the issues that voters who sent him to Washington would like him to focus on, namely the cost of living. And so Iran is not a topic that was brought up during the 2024 campaign. They did not see the reason why we're there. And then the number of issues, some of which we're probably going to talk about tonight, but whether it is hosting a UFC fight, whether it is redecorating Washington, D.C., the ballroom, et cetera, that is still going to be part of the president's focus going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as he's still focusing on things outside the purview of what regular voters want to see done, the straits reopening isn't going to solve all of the political problems for Republicans.
Right. What we just saw also breaking today, Jasmine, was Gavin Newsom coming out and saying, I'm under investigation by this Department of Justice, which he's arguing is being basically puppeteered by Donald Trump. How do you see that playing out? Again, we should say we have no idea what the nature of this investigation is, how legitimate it is, where it comes from, if there are serious allegations behind it. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think it's just what Amy said, which is that voters feel as though Trump is not focused on their concerns. And a part of that has been this retribution campaign that he's been on and that his Department of Justice has been on, targeting folks who the president believes are either responsible for some of the legal issues that he faced over the last few years, or at least added to the environment, or people he just frankly doesn't like. The president has been talking about fraud in California for not just years, but really concentrated in the last 2 weeks since that primary election. Now, of course, we don't know any of the details, so we don't know if these are at all connected, but Gavin Newsom has been a thorn in this president's side. It has been somebody who the president believes is a fraudulent person, a person that shouldn't be elected office. He said he's the world's worst governor, I believe, multiple times. And so obviously, this is a moment in which Gavin Newsom is under the DOJ light, but the question is who possibly comes next?
Yeah, there was a time when a politician would not take to social media to tell folks that they are under investigation by the Department of Justice.
After me, hey, everybody.
I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm being investigated. That was something you didn't do. But in this era now, if you are a Democrat being investigated by the Trump Department of Justice, that is a badge of honor. In the same way, President Trump was able to rally his base saying the Biden administration is coming after me. So for Gavin Newsom, who just happened to drop in there that maybe the president's coming after me because I'm running for president, it is yet another signal that Gavin Newsom is a likely 2028.
And I think that this is just the fourth person that's uploaded a video to Twitter/X saying that they are under investigation. So, I mean, obviously, social media teams now have to think about that when they move forward.
I mean, it's a badge of honor for Democrats, it seems, as Amy's saying. Jasmine Wright, Amy Walter, great to see you both.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the first time in more than 25 years, the Food and Drug Administration has approved a new active ingredient for over-the-counter sunscreens. In a recent conversation, Amna Nawaz got the latest on what consumers need to know.
The long-awaited approval clears the way for sunscreen manufacturers to begin using bemotrizanol, or BEMT, an ingredient that's been used in Europe and Asia since the 1990s. Experts are welcoming the move at a time when more than 8,500 Americans are expected to die from melanoma this year. For more on why this change took so long and what people should know about this new ingredient, I'm joined now by dermatologist Dr. Rachel Nazarian. Doctor, welcome to the NewsHour. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what exactly is BEMT and why is it such an effective ingredient for sunscreens?
So bemotrizanol is one of those unique ingredients that does a great job of blocking both UVA and UVB, but it's not a mineral sunscreen. Typically, we had mineral sunscreens that were always giving that white cast on the skin, but they did a fantastic job of blocking broad spectrum ultraviolet light. BEMT can do that, but it goes on much nicer and has negligible absorption into the system, meaning it's even safer.
Is this something that people might find easier to use in some way, more attractive to use from the consumer's perspective? How should they look at this?
They should look at this as just an absolute upgrade. I have many patients that go to Europe, go to Asia, and they actually get their sunscreen there because they know they're dealing with something that's so much more cosmetically elegant. So it's going to feel great on the skin. It's less irritating, and it still does a fantastic job of preventing sun damage and skin cancers. So I really can't find any negative to this. I just think it took a little long to get to the US market. But in every way, this is something that we should be very excited about.
So why did it take that long to get to the US market? If it's something that's being used in other countries for so long, why did that take so long to get here in the States?
It's a really good question, and it's one that we were asking ourselves at the American Academy of Dermatology. And I have to tell you, in some ways, it's good, right? Because in this country, we want to make sure something is really safe before we offer it to the American consumer. But some of what they were requiring for the legislation here in the US to approve it was a little bit tedious. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel if this is something that was being used internationally and known to be safe. And because of that, the American Academy of Dermatology, they really pushed through legislation to make sure that it's not like this in the future anymore. We should be able to access some of these great safe ingredients much quicker in the future.
You mentioned that the sunscreens with bemotrizinol don't penetrate the skin as much, have lower levels of absorption. And we found when people look at sunscreens, there is concern around this. There was a consumer analysis by Civic Science that found the percentage of Americans who believe sunscreen is toxic grew from 17% in 2021 to 24% in 2025. Is there a reason for people to worry about the safety of the sunscreens that are currently on the market here in the US?
I wouldn't say there's a reason to worry, but I think there's room for improvement. You know, if you can have something like bemotrizinol, which is a really large, bulky molecule, not absorb, then certainly people should feel a little bit safer about that. I mean, what we're really looking for is something that doesn't enter the bloodstream. And bemotrizinol has proven itself very, very safe. And I also think it's just better for sensitive skin. The more absorption you get, the more likely you are to irritate sometimes. So this kind of allows people with sensitive skin, people with any concern about anything that might have systemic absorption, it really kind of takes that off the list. There's just nothing the sunscreen really doesn't do in terms of safety and effectiveness. So I understand the concern, but I have to tell you, this one was worth the wait.
So manufacturers can begin to use bemotrizinol as an active ingredient beginning.
The United States is preparing to mark a quarter century since its founding. It's a milestone often framed as a triumph of democracy and freedom. But Princeton professor Eddie Glaude Jr. argues that America's celebrations have always been plagued by a deeper contradiction, a nation devoted to liberty while repeatedly denying it to millions of its own people. In his new book, America USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries, Glaude traces that tension from the founding to Reconstruction, from the Civil Rights era to today. Jeff Bennett spoke with him earlier about why he argues the country must confront its myths before it can tell the truth about itself.
Eddie Glaude, welcome back to the NewsHour.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
This book, you open it with a striking line. You write, "I do not love America and never have, especially now." Why did you choose to begin there? What are you asking readers to reconsider about their relationship to this country?
Yeah, I think the sentence works on three registers. One is a kind of rejection of the idolatry of the nation state. Right? What does it mean to have an abiding love for something so abstract and often something so morally dubious? The second sentence of the book. I think the second aspect is, I wanted to differentiate myself from James Baldwin. I'm starting from a different place. Baldwin begins with his love of country and says, from there, I can criticize the country perpetually. I want to begin with wound, which takes us to the third feat, the interior experience. My dad was the second African-American hired in the post office in Pascagoula, Mississippi. He moved us from one side of town to the other. I'm playing with my Tonka truck. The man came out, my little neighbor. I imagine him as blonde-haired, blue-eyed. His dad comes out and he says, "Stop playing with that N-word." I grabbed my truck and I walked back inside. The world had announced what it thought about me. And then I went inside and my parents placed a crown above my head. They taught me how to survive it. So I'm really asking the question, how can you expect me to love the country, given, the reality of my experience and the experience of race in the country?
There are people who will hear you say that and will say that you can argue that love of country and criticism are not opposites, that criticism can be an act of love. Why does that frame not work for you?
Well, I think part of what I'm trying to do is to recalibrate it, right? Trying to get us to really confront the truth of who we are, to kind of move beyond the myths and the fantasies, and to think about, instead of having the preposition of, but have the conjunction and, not love of country, but love and country. I'm more interested, Jeff, in loving closer to the ground, not the abstractions. Because whenever I hear a certain kind of invocation of patriotism, it sounds to my ear like a rebel yell.
On that point, one of the central arguments of this book is that the country suffers from a double consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
How does this formulation differ from Du Bois's original form of that idea?
That's a great question. So Du Bois in 1903 wrote The Souls of Black Folk. And, he says that Black folk see themselves through the eyes of those who despise them. We are American and we're African, right? And that doubleness has this impact on how we live our lives. Well, I think double consciousness is that Du Bois ascribes to us is actually a consequence of the double consciousness of the nation. America imagines itself as a beacon of freedom and as a white republic. And you can't hold those two commitments together at once without contradiction, without depositing a kind of madness at the heart of the country. And that's been present from the founding. And it's this madness that leads to this cycle that returns over and over again that we have to navigate.
And we're seeing that now with immigration and voting rights, which you also explore in the book. What patterns are repeating themselves?
Oh, absolutely. So when you think about the mid-20th century revolution, you got two major pieces of legislation that fundamentally changed the nation: the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, the Immigration Act of 1965 overturned the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1924, which was basically written by the Klan. And that established national quotas. And in this period, in 1926, the 150th year anniversary of the nation, the Klan was approved to have its annual convention on the grounds of the Philadelphia Exposition celebrating the nation's 150th year. They were going to celebrate the flag and burn a cross at the same time. That puts that divided soul in clear relief, right?
That is history that most people do not know.
No, we tend to think of the 1920s as the Roaring 20s,
Right.
the Jazz Age, the age of the Charleston, when in fact it was the decade of the Klan. The Klan claimed to have been responsible for the election of Calvin Coolidge. The man who actually co-authored from the House of Representatives the Johnson and Reed Act, the Immigration Act of 1924, was a member of the Klan. Senator Reed from Pennsylvania, not Philadelphia, Mississippi, but Pennsylvania, represented a state where there were over 250,000 members of the Klan. And so 1926, there are all of these parallels, Jeff, to 2026. Calvin Coolidge's speech, for example, he says, we don't need but one revolution. And that revolution wasn't radical. It just gave voice to the enduring metaphysical principles that are true, irrespective of what we do. All we need to do is to remember and restore. MAGA gives that an evangelical twist.
In order for this country to be fully redeemed, I would imagine, in your view, is entirely dependent on what average Americans decide to do in this moment. So what should people be doing right now?
In the book, I resist this question in a way, because it's the typical American question. You describe the problem. We talk about the way in which race works, and sentimentality kicks in. We cry our crocodile tears. White rage kicks in, and then we give the policy blueprint. This is what we need to do in order to move forward. And it's a ritual to make us think we're trying to be better.
Well, we saw that after the police killing of George Floyd.
And in a blink of an eye, here we are.
Was it because the solutions were so symbolic and performative?
On one level, that's what sentimentality is. Sentimentality proceeds from the assumption that freedom is my possession, is your possession, white folks' possession, more specifically, to give and to take away. So it's sentimentality that drives it. What can I do for you, not with you? Not a fundamental change. And when those folks who are the object of charity continue to push back, wanting justice, then rage kicks in. You get the question, what more do you want? You get the claim, this is overreach. And then we reach back to what was. Frederick Douglass said, I don't want alms, I want justice. Right? So sentimentality and rage, that's the cycle. So I resist that ritual. I say something much more basic, Jeff. We can't be a beacon of freedom and a white republic. You can't be that at once. Choose. Which one you're going to be?
Eddie Glaude, the book is America, USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries. Always a privilege to speak with you. An instant bestseller, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
A quick note, in the introduction to that conversation, I said the nation was celebrating a quarter century since its founding. It is, of course, celebrating a quarter millennia. My apologies. And an update to a story that we reported earlier. The city that never sleeps finally saw its dream come true this weekend when the New York Knicks won their first NBA title since 1973, vanquishing the San Antonio Spurs in 5 games. If you were in New York City on Saturday, you heard it. Thousands of fans on the streets across the 5 boroughs celebrating wildly after the Knicks pulled off this improbable upset in the final seconds. For more on this historic moment and thrilling series, we are joined by Monica McNutt. She was there for Game 5. She covers the Knicks and is a basketball analyst for ESPN and the MSG Network. Monica, thank you so much for being here. 53 years for Knicks fans of droughts and disappointments. I mean, they had been in the finals 3 times. The most recently, I think it was 99, where they lost to the Spurs. So this is particularly sweet. What makes this win so significant this time around?
Well, William, I think you started with it. How many people have had the opportunity to now witness 2 victories for this New York Knicks organization? 53 years, while it is young in spirit, if you were born in 73, right? It is a long time to wait to see your team return back to the mountaintop. And I think that earnest desire to see this team be successful, combined with the fact that New York City, without question, William, is such a basketball town. It is the sport that truly unifies the city. Yes, there's another team in another part of town, but they weren't originally here. And so most New Yorkers take a lot of pride in the orange and blue. And so I think when you look at the time that it has taken to return and what this team means to the fabric of the city, it was just a moment of serendipity is the word that comes to mind. Destiny may be a better word. And so you could hear and feel the enthusiasm. It was palpable.
It was palpable. I want to play a tiny little bit of video of you watching the last seconds of this game unfold. That look on your face is so wonderful and beautiful. I mean, you're a pro. You kept it together, obviously, to do your job. But I'm just wondering what that was like for you personally.
William, my partner, Tyler Murray, my terrific radio partner, he asked me earlier in the day, hey, when are you going to cry? And I'm like, no, we're with them all the time. It's something to be excited about. And so I will admit that I was very surprised by my own reaction. I have to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Betty, and her lovely pooch, Kingsley, because we were texting earlier in the day. And so she would share how excited the neighborhoods are and which party was doing this. And earlier that day, we were texting, and she actually said that it was a love letter to the city, what the team was doing. And I was like, Betty, I am using that if we win tonight.
I heard you say that.
Perfect. There is nothing like the love letter that an organization has an opportunity to write to its fans and to its cities, quite like winning a championship. Yeah, it captures the exchange, the mutual love for one another from a fan base to an organization. And I think for these fans, as you mentioned, as we started our conversation, many of them waiting 53 years, many of them only having the heartbreak of 99 or 94. I had a friend text me that say my 10-year-old self was healed instantly because he remembers watching in 99 in the heartbreak and despair. And so what a better way? Is there a better way for a sports organization to say I love you to its fan base by doing everything that they can to hoist the Larry O'Brien as this Knicks team has been able to do?
How did this Knicks team accomplish getting to the mountaintop, as you said, when so many other stacked Knicks teams were not able to do this? They did it on the backs of a guard that many thought was too small and maybe not ready for this. Jalen Brunson, of course, we're talking about. How did they do it?
Jalen Brunson is perhaps one of the most unique all-star point guards and people in the league. He is very familiar with what he can't do, or at least what the scouting reports, what people say. But William, he was drafted in the 2nd round. His foundation to this day is called the 2nd round foundation. At every turn, whether it was in high school because he wasn't the most athletic, whether it was in college because he wasn't the most athletic or he was too slow, whether now in the NBA, all he has done is win. And so there are those among us who just walk with the winning and the clutch DNA and refuse for it to be dimmed by others' speculations and opinions. And so when I look at the compilation of this group, you have to tip the cap from owner on down. James Dolan, down to Leon Rose and William Wesley in the front office, the bold decision at the end of last season to let go of a coach that had brought this team as close as they had been since '99 to an opportunity to win a championship, and then the pieces that they built around this team. I think when you're a leader and your centerpiece never gets too high, never gets too low, is willing to take less when he's at the negotiation table with the mindset of, I want to make sure that there's enough to build a team around me, I think it just flows from there. They understood their roles at the highest level. And as Deuce McBride described it to me, they understood that it was just winning time.
Such an incredible comeback series this was. Monica McNutt, great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And an update to a story that we reported earlier. The U.S. Air Force says 8 crew members aboard a B-52 bomber that crashed at Edwards Air Force Base in California are believed to be dead. In a statement, officials said that, quote, initial indications are that that crash was not survivable. That is the News Hour for tonight. I'm William Brangham. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, guys, we got to talk about what happened with UFC, okay? I think it is there. Okay.
Disrupting an alleged plot targeting last weekend's UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House. Officials telling Fox a network of nearly 24 suspects have been identified with at least 5 people in custody. The alleged plan included explosive-packed drones hitting buildings near the event, forcing a mass evacuation and steering crowds towards a pre-staged sniper team. A second wave was then planned to storm the White House gate. The FBI first learned of the threat last Wednesday and worked with law enforcement across multiple states to stop it. Joining us now on the phone, former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. Dan, thank you for getting on the air with us. What else can you tell us? This is quite a frightening and sobering discovery.
Well, notice the class warfare language amongst the plotters there that appears in this early stage to point to some type of motive. You know, that just again speaks to the unbelievably charged political rhetoric in the country.
Now to a Fox News alert, the FBI revealing that they thwarted an alleged plot targeting this past weekend's UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House.
Unbelievable. Another one. Ty Pyro joins us with the details. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning. This breaking news just into the Fox newsroom. The FBI disrupting this alleged plot targeting the UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House. Officials telling Fox a network of nearly 24 potential plotters were identified with at least 5 people in custody right now. The suspects allegedly traveled to Fredericksburg, Virginia to make final preparations for the attack. And the alleged plan allegedly included explosive-packed drones hitting buildings near the event, forcing a mass evacuation, and then steering crowds, get this, toward a pre-staged sniper team. A second wave was then planned to storm the White House gate. The FBI first learned of the threat on June 10th and worked with law enforcement across multiple states to stop it. FBI Director Kash Patel saying, quote, "We are built to detect, respond to, and bring to justice those who threaten the lives of American citizens, particularly during large gatherings like the historic UFC 250 fight." That's exactly what we did here. Over 4,300 people were in attendance for UFC 250, which included 1,200 service members. Luckily, nobody was harmed during the FBI's takedown. The event went off without a hitch. Much more on this in the coming minutes, hours, days, and of course, weeks. Back to you.
Ainsley, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Grip. An FBI news alert. The FBI is is disrupting an alleged plot targeting last weekend's UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House. Officials telling Fox a network of nearly 24 suspects has been identified, with at least 5 people in custody. The alleged plan included explosive packed drones hitting buildings near the event, forcing a mass evacuation and steering crowds toward a pre-staged sniper team. A second wave was then planned to storm the White House gate. The FBI first learned of the threat last Wednesday and then worked with law enforcement across multiple states to stop it. Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley joins us now. Jonathan, we're learning about this after the fact. We know that the fight went off without any problems. Thank the good Lord. They uncovered this on Signal chats. What's your reaction?
Well, Ainsley, this is really a cautionary tale. The fact is that the government is not the only party preparing for the July 4th celebrations. There are terrorist organizations that are drawn to the same events. If you are in the business of creating terror, there's no greater inducement than these types of celebrations, including the one at the White House. What is really chilling about this is the level of preparation and planning. This was not just some type of improvised device or a sniper. This was a well set out pattern of events to maximize casualties. And we have to keep in mind that under the Biden administration, millions of unvetted people were released into this country. It would be a very dangerous delusion to believe that these terrorist organizations and countries did not use that open border to bring people inside.
Well, I'm reading a little bit more too, Jonathan. This is crazy. It says the one alleged suspect told investigators the goal was to target capitalist elites, billionaires, politicians who received donations from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. The investigation stretched at least 12 FBI field offices. Thanks to all those FBI agents who thwarted this so that nobody was injured and our president was safe. All right, let's talk about Luigi Mangione. Today he will be in New York State Court for a status hearing. What does this mean?
You know, we're going to see a bit about the schedule that will be laid out for his trial. But what we're really looking for now are indications on his defense. He lost a major motion in allowing the gun, his writings to get into the trial. He doesn't have anything on the table to use as a defense except for a potential mental capacity defense and the traditional insanity defense. In New York, they have something called extreme emotional disturbance, or an EED defense. Notably, one of his lawyers actually used that defense successfully in a criminal case. Now, the key about that is you can go for insanity, which is tough, and I just don't see it being successful here, or you can go for an ED, which would knock it down to a misdemeanor. That's what you really get from it. But what is most important is that if they make those types of defenses, they can bring in a lot of his dislike for the healthcare industry. This could be an effort to sort of play on the jury. The healthcare industry is not real popular, and it would allow them to talk more about his grievances from his own involvement with that industry.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. The healthcare industry, not really popular, and we live in New York City. This will be tried in New York City. Trial scheduled for September 8th. Given support of Mangione, can you find an unbiased jury in Manhattan?
You know, Anthony, this is always a problem with a high-profile case. Many of us have been shocked, even though we've been covering criminal trials for decades, at the level of support for this individual. What is really chilling is that people are not questioning that he's guilty. They're celebrating that he's guilty. They're celebrating that he was an assassin. Does that mean you can't get a fair jury? No, you can. It just takes extra work by the court and by counsel. But this thing is so loaded with these undercurrents of emotion and anger that it's going to be a great challenge for the court and counsel.
I know. 42,000 donors have given to that crowdsourced defense fund. He's raised $1.5 million, Jonathan. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
We'll begin with the Fox News alert. An FBI disrupting an alleged plot targeting last weekend's UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House. Officials telling Fox a network of nearly 24 suspects have been identified, with at least 5 people in custody. The alleged plan included explosive-packed drones hitting buildings near the event, forcing a mass evacuation and steering crowds towards a pre-staged sniper team. A second wave was then planned to storm the White House gate. The FBI first learned of the threat last Wednesday and worked with law enforcement across multiple states to stop it. Joining us now on the phone, former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. Dan, thank you for getting on the air with us. What else can you tell us? This is quite a frightening and sobering discovery.
Well, notice the class warfare language amongst the plotters there that appears in this early stage to point to some type of motive. You know, that just again speaks to the unbelievably charged political rhetoric in the country and this, you know, demonization of people by either their politics or their wealth or their success. So that was disturbing. A couple other things, I've been mourning about, and certainly not just me, but a number of people who've been in the space. This just not future threat of drones, the now threat of drones. I mean, we saw Spiderweb in Ukraine, that massive operation. This technology is evolving on probably weekly, if not monthly cycles now. And don't think that, people looking to commit malicious acts, terrorists and others haven't picked up on this. It's cheap. It's very difficult to defeat. As I said, the technology cycle is quick, where measures, countermeasures, that cycle can be just weeks in long end. And they're learning a lot of this technology in war theaters overseas. So you see the use of that as well. And then I'd point out as well, what appears to have been a planning and a second wave attack. This has bothered me for a long time, not just the first wave. You know, you see them when you look back to the Malcolm X shooting, you get the distraction event, and then you get the secondary event. Well, when you do that with heavy weapons and drones, you know, the casualties would be unimaginable if something like this weren't disrupted.
It's frightening stuff. And I want to go back, Dan, to your first point about the political charged rhetoric that we're hearing. So from what we're learning, we learned that one suspect allegedly told investigators the goal was to target, quote, capitalist elites, billionaires, or politicians who received donations from AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. So is it your sense from a detail like that we could be looking at possibly Americans, think Luigi Mangione type, carrying this out, as opposed to foreign actors or illegals that came across the border, which we have heard about so much of and saw in the last administration?
Yeah, it's really grotesque, Griff. And when you see it on the other side of it, when I was sitting in these briefings in the morning, and you're getting classified briefings about where this threat is going, you know, me and many others saw the writing on the wall a long time ago. This whole rebound in this collectivist guilt movement, that you're somehow guilty because of whatever your success or your religion or your faith. It's grown. We have our own cleanup operation on the right that we've been engaged in for a long time, and I'm proud that the right does that. Polices their own. But you really don't see a similar equivalent movement, Griff, on the left. You just don't. And I get it. A lot of the leftist listeners of the show will say, well, you know, Dan was a conservative candidate. He can't possibly be objective. But, you know, I promise I was objective for the year I was there. And this is a real problem, this stuff on the left, that it's not only accepted, but condoned. You see it in just about every speech, this class warfare, collectivist guilt nonsense. It's really dangerous. And you're seeing it with the language in this threat here.
Last question, because I'm almost out of time, Dan, but I do want to ask you, because under the previous administration, the FBI was really broken. And we understand in thwarting this plot, this spanned as many as a dozen or more FBI offices to actually stop it before it happened. Does this suggest that the FBI that you were just a part of is more intact and more capable to deal with threats like this?
Yeah, Griff, it's important the audience understands this. One of the first things we did, and it was under the direction of the president to get them back in line, is we dumped all the political nonsense when it came to the CTD space, the counterterrorism division space. It was all off. They had either threat priorities were nonsense, it seemed more political, and it seemed threat-oriented. That got scrapped. I mean, thrown out the window, and we said, listen, we're going to allocate assets based on actual threats. And I'll add, we've seen this before where these things can go down, and the FBI, because of its global organization, can make it happen at the snap of a finger. That Turtle Island Liberation Front, which I was a part of, that plot that was disrupted went down just as quickly as this did. That's the benefit of having a global organization with the right priorities and not political priorities.
Former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, thank you for your insight. We'll continue to follow this story. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Griff.
This is unbelievable. Fox News alert, the FBI thwarting an explosive drone attack against the UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House South Lawn last Sunday, and have already taken 5 suspects into custody out of the 23 that were involved.
The multi-phase terror plot allegedly involved using drones filled with explosives to strike buildings in the vicinity, sparking mass panic to drive the fleeing crowd toward a pre-staged sniper team. A second wave of attackers then allegedly planned to storm the White House gate.
The Vice President, J.D. Vance, was at that event on Sunday, and he joins us now to react. Mr. Vice President, thank you for coming on. Congratulations on your new book. We're going to talk about that. But this is very scary. We learned about this, about 30 minutes ago, an hour ago in the middle of our show.
Sure.
Why do you think they're telling us this? Because I know there's a lot going on behind the scenes with the FBI.
Sure.
We don't always find out. Why do you think they're telling us this now? And what's your reaction?
Well, I think they're telling us because the scale of the planned attack is so significant. And I think it's important for us to be as transparent as we can be about these ongoing investigations. We want to tell the American people what's going on, of course. But I actually just heard about it this morning myself. And so this is a very, very dark stuff. And unfortunately, we're talking about this a little bit off camera, but this is what happens when people turn the rhetoric up so loud that disagreeing with somebody is a cause for violence. That's the place that we've come to, unfortunately, with too much of our political rhetoric. We got to tell everybody to tone it down. And I hate to say this, but it's true. You see more political violence and violent rhetoric coming from the left than the right these days. Everybody has a role to cut this stuff out. But I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues in Washington have got to look themselves in the mirror and say, why is so much of this political violence coming from our side of the spectrum? Maybe they can do something different.
Well, Mr. Vice President, this is a clear escalation. We know about the president, attacks against him, you and the rest of the cabinet. Those threats are public.
Yeah.
But this is going after the supporters. The people that were on that line was UFC, MAGA supporters, and they were the target here.
Yeah. Well, and thank God this attack was apparently thwarted or never got to the point where it was carried out. I mean, the event was so amazing, the sense of patriotism, the pride that everybody felt. It was a very fun evening. So this could have been a very terrible tragedy, but it goes to show why we have so much appreciation for the guys who keep us safe and for federal law enforcement, because these are the types of attacks that they're preventing every single day. As you guys know, they don't get the credit for the attacks they prevent. They only get the blame for the attacks that actually happen. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that for every bad incident, there were 100 bad guys who are trying to do something worse. And thank God we've got smart and good people protecting us.
It's such a great point. And the former Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, in the last hour talked about that the FBI has really been streamlined to deal with attack threats like this. I do want to ask you, though, to react to, based on what we know, one suspect allegedly told officials that the, quote, goal was to target capitalist elites, billionaires, and politicians who accept donations from AIPAC. Does that surprise you? And what do you make of that when you hear it?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all, because again, so much of the far left rhetoric is driving itself towards violence. It spins people up into these crazy situations where they feel like, I'm not going to argue against somebody, or I'm not going to debate somebody, or even vote against a politician. I'm going to go and commit violence. It is unfortunately an inevitable consequence of some of the rhetoric that we're seeing. But what I'd say too is, what we've done in the Trump administration that I'm very proud of, and again, we don't draw a lot of headlines to it because it's part of this investigatory work, is we're trying to look at the underground networks that drive towards this violence. 23 people do not get to the point where they're going to commit a mass terror incident in Washington, D.C. without some serious funding, without some serious coordination. And we've actually been trying to go with those networks of coordination, because it's a terrorist plot. That's not a few guys doing crazy stuff. That is a coordinated, planned terrorist plot. Thank God we thwarted it, but we got to do more of that stuff.
Well, Mr. Vice President, you have a very busy week. You have all the shows for your book, and then we're hearing on Friday you're going to maybe sign the Iran deal. We'll get into that in just a minute. But right now, our president is in Geneva for the G7 summit, and I think we have some images. We saw a meeting with Ukraine's President Zelensky earlier today. We also showed images of him meeting with the Emir of Qatar, and now he's meeting with the UAE leader who is there. How important is this, especially coming off of what we're learning about Iran and the deal? Is that why the French president invited some of these leaders from the Gulf states?
You know, I actually don't know. I think they're probably invited because they're just important leaders of an important part of the world. But I think what is most interesting about the last year and a half, the underreported part of the Trump administration's policy in the Middle East, is that all of these Gulf Arab coalition partners are coming together with the United States. Israel is obviously very involved, and they're actually pushing back together. You see the United States working with our Gulf Arab partners in a way you've never seen before in the history of this country. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've gotten to the point where we have a very good peace deal that's on the table that we're ready to sign, is because you see for the first time the Gulf Coast countries pushing back against Iran, uniting under the president's leadership and actually doing something different for a change. You know, what's interesting is there's been a lot of chatter, of course, about this peace deal with Iran. And one of the questions I'm most often asked is, well, how is this different from the Obama JCPOA? And there are all of these answers I could give. Number one, we're not giving them a red cent of American money. Obama gave them over $1 billion in a pallet of cash. There are all these substantive differences. I actually think the most important difference is, you know what those Gulf Arab countries thought about the JCPOA? They hated it, because they thought it empowered Iran to be a bad actor. You know what they think about the President Trump peace plan? They love it, because they think that it's turning over a new leaf to a new Middle East. So there are so many big differences between, of course, our policy and the previous administrations. But what we've done here is actually unite the Gulf together. That could have transformative impacts, not for the next couple of years, but the next couple of generations.
So, Mr. Vice President, it's clear that they respect the commander-in-chief.
Yes, they do.
And Iran respects our military because of what we've been able to do. Some of the things that we're hearing about, we haven't seen the text yet, but just what we're hearing, that the deal would end all sanctions and all waivers. I'm hearing that it will be downblending, but not destruction of the nuclear dust. And there's no closing of the nuclear facilities. And they hope that there's no nuclear weapon for the next 15 years. There's also strong language about stopping funding the proxies, but it says in the deal that Iran has to use its best efforts, not stop it completely. There's also the $300 billion in reparations that's going to come from Qatar and some of the Gulf states, and then $24 billion in unfrozen assets. Is any of that true? And if it would be true, would that concern you?
Yeah, so most of that is basically Iranian propaganda, and you have to understand what's going on here, okay? So the Iranians have just had their conventional military destroyed. Their country has totally changed. They have a totally different leadership than they had even 3 months ago. And so what is happening is that some elements in their society are trying to sell this deal as positively as possible to their domestic audience. Now, that's expected. It's frustrating to me, but that's expected. What is a little unexpected and more frustrating to me is that you see certain people in the American media literally recirculating hardliner talking points from the IRGC instead of telling the truth about what's going on. So first of all, not a single cent of American money goes to Iran, not $300 billion, not $24 billion, not any of the money, the dollar figures that I've seen floating around. Number two, this is a firm commitment backed up by verifiable action to never develop or buy a nuclear weapon by the Iranians, which, remember, that was the whole point of this entire operation, is to ensure not just that Iran wouldn't have a nuclear weapon for the next couple of years, but that they would make that long-term commitment. Now, here's the important part, though, is there are benefits to Iran if they perform their end of the obligation, not money from the United States, but maybe Qatar or the UAE or Saudi Arabia, maybe they want to invest in Iran and build a power plant. The United States, our approach to that is going to be, yeah, you can do that so long as the Iranians are behaving properly. But if they don't behave properly, they don't get any of the benefits of this bargain. And so you see the propagandists who are saying, here are all the things Iran gets. And the fine print, which actually the big print in the actual agreement, is they don't get any of that stuff unless they totally transform themselves as a country. And if they do, that's a huge win for everybody, for the region. If they don't, no skin off our back.
So it's performance-based, Mr. Vice President, but as you mentioned, the hardliners of the IRGC, General Ahmad Vahidi is the head of the IRGC. He was the first commander of the Quds Force under the current Supreme Leader's father. He appears to be committed to his hardlines. So even if a deal is signed on Friday, which you will likely be at, will the phase two is the actual compliance. And Iran has shown They never wanted to do that. They cheat, they steal, they lie, and do what they want to do. What gives you reason to believe it's different this time?
Well, what gives me reason to believe is that I never believe and I never trust anybody's words. I trust people's actions. And what this deal, what the president's peace plan fundamentally does is it creates a two-pathway option for the United States of America. No matter what happens, Iran's nuclear program has been destroyed. They have no enrichment capacity. We destroyed it over the last year and a half. No matter what happens, their economy is in dire straits. The blockade and a number of the actions we've taken ensures that. No matter what happens, their conventional military has been destroyed, and they don't have the resources to rebuild it. But here's the option for Iran. If you learn the right lessons from this, and if you change the way that you react and respond to the United States, option one is we're going to change the way that we respond to you. We're going to have a better relationship. But if they choose option two, which is we're going to continue to try to pursue a nuclear weapon, then nothing that we don't commit to doing anything as part of this deal. So the United States wins either way. What the president is trying to do is actually extend the hand of peace and say, if the Iranian people want greater prosperity, then their leadership has to step up and change their behavior. If they do, great. If they don't, the United States has already gotten a lot from what we need.
As vice president, we assume you will probably run for president. I know you've been asked about this a lot lately. You said, I'm going to talk to my wife. I'll decide after the midterms. No doubt the president will be supportive. You're 41 years old. Donald Trump has said, remember when he asked the crowd a month ago, he said, do you want J.D. Vance? Do you want Marco? And everyone responded. And he said, I think they might make they might make good running mates together and be on the same ticket. Here he is talking about the two of you running together. Listen to this.
I study to see if they like each other. I just find it interesting. You know, it's life. It's big time stuff. I watch them together. They get along great. They have a good relationship. They're sort of similar in a lot of ways, but they're very talented. And I think the two of them running together as a team would be very unbeatable.
Now, at one point, Marco Rubio, Secretary Rubio, I should say, said at one point that he wouldn't run if he knew you were going to make the decision to run. Where does this stand now?
It stands where we're all focused on the job in front of us. I think the president loves to stir the pot a little bit, and the president loves the entertainment of it. Of course he does. This is what I joked earlier that, does it really sound like the president of the United States to run a televised program for who would be his next apprentice, right? That's what the president does, and he loves that. And it does make this whole thing fun. But fundamentally, I think Marco, me, the entire cabinet, we're just focused on doing a good job. And the thing I hate about politicians and politics writ large is it sometimes seems like in the past, I've only been in politics for 3 years. You elect somebody to do a job, and instead of doing their job, they're worried about the next job. What I said when I got this job is, I just want to do a good job at this thing that I have. And if that happens, the politics will take care of itself. We're only a year and a half into this administration, right? There's so much that we're accomplishing for the American people. Let's do that. Let's win the midterms, and then we can talk about what happens in 28.
Mr. Vice President, one thing I've always appreciated, you've always been candid with me. Sure. Even when I did your interview before you became vice president,
of course,
you were the only candidate that said, if I don't get picked, I'm going to be a little disappointed about this.
Yeah.
So tell me this. I'll ask the question a different way. What would take running for president of the United States off the table for you? Everybody wants to be president. Every vice president wants the job. It's just the political thing. So what would it take for you to just take it off the table? Something with family, something with God? What is it?
Well, obviously, to do anything, to run for the Senate, to run for vice president, to run for president, you have to feel like it's something that God wants you to do. I mean, I write about this. I think you have to have a certain spirit of humility about any of these things, and you have to do what is best for other people, not what serves your own ambition. You have to, of course, have the buy-in from your family, but fundamentally, man, I'll be candid with you because I always am. The way that I make decisions, and this is maybe I'm just different from other politicians like this, I don't like plot things out. I make the decisions that are right in front of me. I try to do as well as I can, and then I figure it out when I've got to make a new decision. Because I don't have to make that decision, I just haven't thought about it that much.
That's fair. Let's talk about your book for a second,
yeah,
Vice
please.
President. And we were talking before you came on. This is a great book about finding your faith. And I'm a Catholic convert as well. So I've read this cover to cover because I'm so fascinated about it. But one of the chapters you have in here is called Semper Fi.
Yep.
Play on the Semper Fi motto of the Marine Corps, always faithful.
Sure.
And you talk about during your deployment to Iraq in 2005, 2006, to the Anbar province, at the height of the worst fighting in Fallujah, Ramadi, You write that's where you essentially lost your faith.
That's right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I was raised in a very devout household by, my dad would take us to church, but my dad wasn't always in my life, right? I grew up a big chunk of my early childhood without my dad as a constant presence. My grandmother didn't really take us to church, and I don't think I was, in a lot of ways, properly formed in my faith. And so while I believed that Jesus was the Son of God and I cared a lot about it, I got to Iraq and that faith just collided with reality. I felt like God wasn't speaking to me anymore. There was sort of violence all around us. I was dealing with these Iraqi poll workers, some of whom were devout Muslims. And, you talk to them about faith, and I realized that I actually couldn't defend my faith as well as they could defend their faith. So I hadn't been properly formed in that way. But I also just didn't feel like my faith was really speaking to me. Back home, my grandmother had just died. There were a lot of family problems that happened when my grandmother died. My mom was struggling with addiction very badly at the time. And I just didn't feel like my faith was all that relevant. And part of what drew me back to faith is that I sort of looked around at the Christians that were in my life and the non-Christians that were in my life. And I realized, what? All the things that I care about as an atheist, as a person who thinks that he's rational and knows everything, I care about money and I care about prestige and I care about where I went to school. Those things aren't making me a good person. But these Christians who I dismissed, when I was an arrogant atheist as these bumpkins, they've actually figured it out. They're happy, they're healthy, their kids are in a good place. And I thought to myself, if they're right about that, if they're right about how to live a good life, maybe they're right about Jesus being the Son of God. Maybe there's an inspiration for that character that I dismissed too easily when I was in Iraq.
What I noticed reading your book was a lot of us as parents, we want our children to have faith and we want them to raise their children, our grandchildren with faith. And we can lead them to the water, but we can't make them drink.
Exactly.
And so I liked that your grandmother watched Billy Graham. She loved Billy Graham.
She did.
She would take you to that little church where nobody was at church, but she loved that minister. Occasionally she would take you.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all did some Pentecostal churches. And so talk about after converting to Catholicism, sometimes we get so caught up in the denomination that Catholics and Protestants or they don't think that this denomination is educated. The Ivy Leaguers are Episcopalians or they're Lutherans. We get so caught up in that. How do we ensure that our children are just hearing the word so that we can raise generations that love God? Yeah.
So first, I remember when I was in boot camp and I met a kid from Eastern Kentucky, and then we had a guy in our boot camp platoon who was from a Christian denomination I'd never heard of. And I wrote a letter home to my mama and I said, "What is this?" And she responded, "Well, it's just another branch of Christianity." And she said, "Honey, in Eastern Kentucky, we're all snake handlers." And so that was her response to that. But I remember that was obviously, she was joking with me, but she said, "It's all about Jesus." And that's one of the things I really love about the American church is there are all of these different pathways to God. Everybody has their own crises, their own blessings, their own moments of grace, their own moments of struggle. But I think that what's really cool about the American church is it's so dynamic because we're all forced to really deal with these issues. Like, you can't be an American Catholic or an American Pentecostal or an American Southern Baptist without running into somebody who has a slightly different perspective on faith. Yes, Jesus is all that matters. But I think one of the ways that we come to know God is by talking about him and trying to understand him. And that's what I love about the American church is we're all kind of figuring that out together. Different ways, sometimes with snake handlers, sometimes with speaking in tongues, sometimes with a beautiful Catholic mass. But I think all these pathways really matter. And they're part of the reason why we do find our path to God.
Powerful.
Very
Thank you, Mr. Vice
Thank
President. I'm on page 129. I'm looking forward to finishing it.
You got to finish it, man. Communion, please buy it.
Communion.
What a great book. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And by the way, you have an invitation. If you decide to jump into the 2028 race, great place to do it right here on the couch.
I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
More Fox and Friends straight ahead.
FBI Assistant Director with us now, and sir, good day to you. We're told that one person was picked up in Cincinnati, don't have any identifications or any other locations. What do you make of this thus far?
Yeah, so we do know about 5 arrests. Allegedly, there are 23 or so plotters here. So we probably won't get more details because they're conducting operations as we speak involving those 20 plus other co-conspirators. So we'll see how, these 4 or 5 will have to have their first appearance within 48 hours, at which time the arrest warrant affidavit will have to be unsealed, and then we'll have some real details about how this got started. It was a lightning operation. The FBI apparently got information on June 10th, and between now and those 3 or 4, 5 days there, they did a multi-field office investigation across the country and identified the other plotters. We'll see how many of them were actually involved and how much real capability was there. There are a lot of issues that'll be accompanying this prosecution. Will all 23 be arrested? Conspiracy is really punished the conspiracy and the agreement to commit the crime. So all 23 don't have to do anything. They need at least, or they have to be a part of the agreement, but they only need one overt act towards commission of the crime. So it's going to get interesting over the next couple of days. But the scariest part of this really is the drones. We just don't have an answer to drones in our domestic environment here.
Right.
And that type of attack is my greatest fear.
Dana Bill, thank you. Good morning. Stock cold. FBI Director Kash Patel used those words to describe the quick-thinking action of agents and other law enforcement to prevent a planned attack on a White House event. This is the Faulkner Focus. Good morning. I'm John Robertson for Harris. D.C. officials told Fox News that the UFC Freedom 250 event in D.C. this past weekend was the target of a two-wave terror plot. The FBI arrested multiple people across several states, including 2 from California, charged with conspiracy to commit murder. About 85,000 tickets were made available for fans to watch the event at the 52-acre Ellipse Park just south of the White House. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance earlier on Fox.
This is a very, very dark stuff. This is what happens when people turn the rhetoric up so loud that disagreeing with somebody is a cause for violence. That's the place that we've come to, unfortunately. I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues in Washington have got to look themselves in the mirror and say, why is so much of this political violence coming from our side of the spectrum? Maybe they can do something different.
Justice correspondent David Spott following the story. He's here with us in Washington. Good morning, David.
John, good morning to you. We're thankful that this did not turn into an actual plot. Those 2 men, as you mentioned, who were arrested in California and are being charged with conspiracy to commit murder, they appeared in federal court in California yesterday. A teenager is facing charges in Ohio. John, around 4,300 people were in attendance for UFC 250, including 1,200 service members. Investigators tell Fox the alleged plan was to use an explosive-laden drones to hit buildings near the event, which could force a mass evacuation and steer crowds towards a pre-staged sniper team. A, quote, second wave was allegedly planning to storm the White House. One suspect allegedly told investigators the goal was to target, quote, capitalist elites or billionaires or politicians who received donations from the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, known as AIPAC. Now, in Ohio, a 19-year-old named Tyson Proper, according to multiple sources, was taken into custody. Authorities say that he allegedly spent $3,000 of his graduation money to purchase ammunition, guns, and magazines for the alleged attack. In California, 2 men, Brian Roa and Michael Allen Thomas, were arrested and, as I mentioned, appeared in court yesterday. Authorities have 23 people on the list as part of a potential network of alleged plotters. And there is more. Investigators uncovered encrypted chats on cell phones where people allegedly discussed attacking the UFC event. And one of the people in the chat identified some 23 users discussing what's called pre-operational activity. And some, John, allegedly planned to travel to Fredericksburg, Virginia, just south of Washington, D.C., a day or 2 before the fight to prepare for the alleged attack. As we go on throughout the day, more of these court documents are going to be unsealed. We're told that we will find out more about the names and the people behind this alleged plot that, as I said when I joined you, thankful never materialized. John.
Yeah, thankfully this thing got rolled up before it got put into play. David Spunk, get back to us if you get any more. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Nicole
John.
Parker, former FBI special agent and Fox News contributor, joins us now. I guess it's pretty clear, Nicole, that every time President Trump hosts some kind of an event, it's going to be a potential target.
You're exactly right, John, and this was no different. And thank goodness for the FBI, the Secret Service, and all of local law enforcement that assisted in this daunting task. I think what's important to note is that events of this magnitude is now expected. Law enforcement is on edge. The intel community is on edge, and they are looking for those tips to come in. And in this particular incident, my understanding is that a relative heard a family member speaking about their desire to carry out nefarious acts in Washington, D.C., and they reported that to law enforcement. So we say over and over, if you see something, say something. In this instance,
they did say something. And because of the FBI, the Secret Service under the Trump administration and local law enforcement, they acted on it swiftly. The FBI and law enforcement learned of it on June 10th. The event was on June 14th. Allegedly, again, people had planned to go to Fredericksburg, Virginia to do pre-planning. And there was extensive planning that went into this, I believe. But again, if you see something, it is your responsibility to speak up, because we cannot have this types of incidents terrorizing our country. UFC 250 was an iconic event. The targeting of the location was no coincidence. It was at the White House, honoring our country's 250th birthday. Like they said, billionaires were allegedly, of interest. I know Mark Zuckerberg was present. Capitalism was at the top of the list. That's things that these people that want to terrorize our country, they hate and despise, and they want to do anything they can to create chaos, destruction, evil, and murder.
Now, let's not forget, too, that 4,300 people were actually at the event at the White House, on the White House grounds, but there were tens of thousands more who were watching that party at the Ellipse as well. So the idea of a target-rich environment is just off the charts here. Here's what the Secret Service said. They said, quote, "Our most important responsibility is safeguarding the president and every person under Secret Service protection. In the days leading up to this weekend, our special agents, mission support personnel, and technical security teams worked around the clock to identify those responsible and hold them accountable." As you point out, this plot was uncovered on June the 10th. That's just 4 days before this event took place. Can you imagine if it had gone missed?
Well, again, the plot was quite extensive, in my opinion. They had planned to first use, drones with explosives to attack nearby buildings in the vicinity, and then they knew that would cause a mass evacuation, and then they were going to do the sniper act and probably target as many people as they could in the mass chaos of evacuation, and then they planned to storm the actual White House gates. And so the signal chat with 23 individuals. Let's see what happens. I wouldn't be shocked, John, if there were several more arrests that come into this conspiracy. Court records will be unveiled. We will get more information. And there's no end to this. FBI, Secret Service, they will continue to do a full investigation. Department of Justice will make sure that justice is brought to anyone that tries to inflict pain on those who are literally celebrating the freedom of America and our 250th birthday.
Yeah, well, 5 people in custody so far, 23 apparently, if not more, involved in this plot. So I would expect that more arrests are yet to come. Nicole Parker for us this morning. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. Breaking news out of Washington, D.C. on a potential tragedy that's been averted. The FBI revealing earlier today it foiled an alleged terror plot that was set to target Sunday night's UFC Freedom event at the White House. So good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Hemmer, live here in New York City, trying to figure this out as long as we go along today. Good morning at home. Morning to you, Dana.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. So nothing like a little breaking news in the morning. Officials say nearly 24 plotters were identified. They have 5 people in custody. The alleged plan featured explosive-packed drones hitting buildings near the event.
Then we are told they would steer the crowds toward a sniper team in waiting, ready to pick people off. The vice president moments ago on Fox and Friends talking about the foiled plot.
So much of the far left rhetoric is driving itself towards violence. It spins people up into these crazy situations where they feel like, I'm not going to argue against somebody, or I'm not going to debate somebody, or even vote against a politician. I'm going to go and commit violence. We're trying to look at the underground networks that drive towards this violence. 23 people do not get to the point where they're going to commit a mass terror incident in Washington, D.C. without some serious funding, without some serious coordination. And we've actually been trying to go with those networks of coordination because it's a terrorist plot. That's not a few guys doing crazy stuff. That is a coordinated, planned terrorist plot. Thank God we thwarted it, but we got to do more of that stuff.
David Spunt is live in D.C. with the latest. David, this news just breaking. What do you know?
Well, I've reached out to several sources, and I'm awaiting some more details, Dana, on names and specific charges. We're told we will get some more information as the day unfolds. This involves nearly 24 people as part of this potential network, according to authorities, and details were uncovered on an app called Signal, which is an encrypted chat app. 5 are in custody. Fox Digital reporting investigators have 23 people on a list as part of this potential network of alleged plotters. Investigators tell Fox the plan was to use drones with explosives to hit buildings near the White House, which would force a mass evacuation and steer crowds toward a pre-staged sniper team. A, quote, second wave was allegedly planning to storm the White House gate. FBI Director Kash Patel commenting in a statement this morning. I will read part of it. He says, on June 10th, FBI and our law enforcement partners became aware of a potential threat to the UFC America 250 event in Washington, D.C., involving individuals outside of the national capital region. And thanks to the rapid action of this FBI, our partners, and the DOJ in a multi-state operation, multiple individuals are now in custody, and allegedly planned attacks were stopped cold. And there is more. Investigators uncovered these signal encrypted chats where several people allegedly discussed attacking the UFC event. And one of the people in the chat identified 23 signal users discussing what's called pre-operational activity. Now, some allegedly planned to travel to Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is south of Washington, D.C., a day or two before the big fight to prepare for the alleged attack. One suspect allegedly told investigators the goal was to target, quote, capitalist elites, quote, billionaires or politicians who received donations from the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, known as AIPAC. And according to these sources, there was an arrest so far in Cincinnati, Ohio, where one suspect was taken into custody. But as of now, Dana and Bill, no information on any type of foreign interference, foreign relations, or information on names of these people. We are pressing our sources to find out more, to see what officials have to say and identifying these people that are in custody, as we're being told.
And can
Dana,
we
Bill.
expect a press conference from the FBI or DOJ?
As of now, we're told there is no press conference scheduled. We asked to see if somebody would be on camera today to talk about this. We're told no press conference. Of course, that could change, but as of now, it appears that there's not going to be.
And you said one person in Cincinnati.
That's what we're hearing.
Other locations, cities, states given?
As of now, no. We're told one person in custody in Cincinnati. According to the FBI director in that X post, he said multiple people outside the capital region. They were going to travel to Fredericksburg, Virginia, south of D.C., but the only arrest we're aware of is in Cincinnati as of now. But 5 people in custody. So I suspect we'll find out where those people are from as soon as we can, and we'll bring it to you.
All right, David Spun, thank you.
So Bill Daly,
Thanks,
former
guys.
FBI investigator. Bill, want to get your top line thoughts. Sounds like they're still running this down based on some of those answers from David.
Absolutely, Bill. And actually, 2 things jump out at me, Bill. One is this apparent short time frame. We just heard from your reporter that the FBI only heard about this or knew about it back on the 10th. And so only gave them a couple of days for them to conduct the investigation and really thwart this attempted plot. The other thing that really jumps out at me is what appears to be, I call it kind of a sophisticated, kind of robust plan that these individuals had. Whether those people were able to actually carry it out, we don't know, but there was this kind of tiered approach where they wanted to use drones. They were going to use snipers to shoot at people as they were funneling out of the event. So it suggests to me that there was some pre-arranged, surveillance, if you will, of this event. They knew how it was laid out. They knew where they were going to position people. And the other thing, Bill, that kind of jumps out at me is this kind of 23 people possibly involved. In the past, we've heard about incidents where 1 or 2 people, kind of lone wolf kind of individuals, plan these things. But to have 23 people somewhat involved, now whether they were directly involved or whether they were tangentially, it almost doesn't matter. But it appears to be from the Signal Chat, this encrypted app, that there are about 23 people who had knowledge of or were complicit in this plot.
Bill, Dan Bongino is the former deputy FBI director, and he said this about his worry about drones.
I've been warning about, certainly not just me, but a number of people who've been in the space, this just not future threat of drones, the now threat of drones. I mean, we saw Spiderweb in Ukraine, that massive operation. This technology is evolving on probably weekly, if not monthly cycles now. And don't think that, people looking to commit malicious acts, terrorists and others, haven't picked up on this.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking in terms of civilian populations in the middle of a war zone, like in Ukraine, for example, have to worry about drones, but perhaps also for other types of terrorist attack attempts. That's also something now men and women in uniform and in intelligence have to be thinking about.
Yeah, as you said, Dana, we've certainly seen it happen in theaters where there's conflict, but here in the homeland is that it is something that law enforcement have been concerned about, especially if we talk about these large events, whether it was this one, whether it happens to be the World Cup or any other events. It's becoming a bit more of a concern. I mean, I'd probably say if we spoke about this 5 or more years ago, it'd be a little bit kind of more out there. But today with the technology, with people be able to do 3D printing, be able to kind of enable these devices to swarm in. So it's not just one drone, it's many drones all at one time, which might overwhelm any type of preventive systems that might be out there. It's really of concern. So when you combine all this, Dana, when you look at what we're hearing, again, we're kind of reading some of the investigative tea leaves and trying to discern what's actually happening or happened, is that there was this multiple group of people involved using more sophisticated communications, using technology and drones, and to have another tiered approach by actually have people to snipe at people as they were leaving. So very concerning, more to come.
We'll see when there's a press conference. Might be the time we get our best answers, or some answers anyway. Bill Daly, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
An update to our top story. The FBI announcing it stopped a plot to attack the White House UFC event. The Secret Service spoke about this at an unrelated event.
This is still an active, ongoing investigation. Just because we're done with Freedom 250 or that particular event doesn't mean we're going to stop. There are still suspects at large, and we're going to work it until everyone's been identified. I'd say it was unique due to the numbers involved, the level of planning involved. It was an active plot, yes, involving purported claim to be plan to use drones, snipers, etc. We've seen a significant increase in threat cases. We're up 40% this year in threat cases.
David Spun is live in Washington. New images just unsealed. David, what did you find?
Well, Kaylee, this is a story that deals with many different suspects in many different states. And we are learning, looking through these documents, that a mother in Ohio had the courage to call authorities on her 19-year-old, and she expressed some concern, and she may have blown this entire case open. His name is 19-year-old Tyson Proper, and he was picked up after she called authorities on June 10th, just a few days ago. This was 4 days before the UFC fight. We want to show some images. The first image, I believe, that we're going to show is a rifle that belonged to her son, according to authorities. The other is a screen grab, several screen grabs showing aerial images and maps of the Washington, D.C. area, and discussing where snipers possibly would be related to the White House. This is all evidence that is posted on an official court docket right now, an official government document. But I will say 19-year-old Tyson Proper's mother called police after she was concerned about his purchases and communications with people online. It then led them to conversations that he allegedly had with someone named Brian Roa and Michael Thomas in Southern California. They appeared yesterday before a federal judge. We're also told that there is a suspect in Nebraska and one in Missouri as well. So what we're being told here, Kaylee and everyone on the couch, is that this alleged plot consisted of a plan to have drones that were actually armed with some type of firepower go.
Okay. Do you guys want to get to Donald Trump before I get out of here? That's crazy. That's crazy. Let's see.
We are learning more tonight about the alleged plot to kill the president and countless others at Sunday's UFC cage fight on the White House lawn. The plan, which was disrupted only after a worried family member called police, involved flying drones over the audience, detonating explosives above, and then shooting the crowd as it fled. All that according to federal prosecutors who have charged at least 5 in connection, including a teenager quoted as saying the goal was to jumpstart a revolution. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now with more. Ed, good evening to you.
Tony, good evening. Federal investigators say the alleged plotters
were motivated by mutual concern with government corruption, the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files, and even the environmental effects of data centers. But given security restrictions around the White House, their chance of success was slim. Court papers unsealed today reveal the at least 5 men charged so far likely intended to target and kill President Trump, Vice President Vance, and other wealthy people and politicians at Sunday's UFC event at the White House.
That is a coordinated, planned terrorist plot. Thank God we thwarted it.
At least 19 people had been discussing the plot on the encrypted messaging app Signal. The Secret Service says some have yet to be arrested.
There are still suspects at large, and we're going to work it until everyone's been identified.
The plot began unraveling last Wednesday when the mother of one of the alleged planners, 19-year-old Tyson Proper of Ohio, tipped off police that he was buying weapons. Proper was arrested one day before the UFC fight. Investigators found a rifle painted with an American flag, a tactical vest, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Proper told law enforcement the plan was to stage a demonstration on the north side of the White House as a distraction, then deploy small explosive-laden drones to detonate over the UFC octagon, then have sniper teams shoot high-value targets as they fled. But this is likely as close as the plotters would have gotten to the north side of the White House and Pennsylvania Avenue. It's closed to the general public because of ongoing construction and staging of the UFC fight. And geofencing blocks private commercial drones from flying over downtown Washington. But former senior DHS official Tom Warwick says law enforcement was lucky to have caught them.
What I do worry about is not the specific plot they had put together for the UFC match on the White House, but rather that they would convert from that to some other kind of deadly attack, and that might have done some real harm.
CBS News has learned the alleged ringleader wasn't arrested until Sunday, the day of the UFC fight. Authorities allowed the fight to go on because the Secret Service believed it had fortified the White House with maximum protection. Tony?
You know, Ed, we're also hearing about a new price tag for the ballroom the president is adding onto the White House. What do you know on that front?
Well, the president has repeatedly said the ballroom would cost about $400 million funded by private donors. But according to the Washington Post, the construction company handling the work estimates the total cost at $600 million, with more than half coming from taxpayers. Records obtained by the Post show the contractor has already been paid tens of millions of public dollars. The White House tonight doesn't deny the reports and tells CBS News this weekend's failed attack proves why the ballroom is needed. Tony?
All right, Ed, thank you very much.
We need a ballroom. We need a ballroom. Do you guys think we need a ballroom? Do you guys think we need a ballroom? I see your messages. I have to get to them after, okay? Fake news. Mercy. There's nothing fake about what I show you. Okay, let's see. Before we get to our favorite, let me go here. Yes to the ballroom. Yes to the ballroom. Yes, let's dance. Damn it. Let's go.
Investigate precisely how this case was opened. Benny Johnson's the host of the Benny Johnson Show. Very interesting that Kamala's top competitor in the 2028 Democrat primary, the family's under investigation in California. There must be a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows better with the power of whistleblowers than Hillary Clinton, given her experience in the White House. And I got to tell you, it looks like she was licking her chops going after Joe Biden. You could see it, Jesse. Hillary Clinton wanted to be president. She wanted to run again. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to remind the Democratic Party in this rat eat rat, Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm spiral downward that their party is in, that Hillary Clinton can still run again, Jesse. She's not term limited. So can Biden. Biden can hit it again. Go for it, bro. It'd be your fourth, fifth time running for president. You've been running since the Jimmy Carter era. Go for it, buddy. What do you have to lose? Hillary can run. It's an open field. By the time we're done with this, Jesse, I think it's going to be Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau at the top of the Democrat ticket in 2028. J.D. Vance, by the way, showing range today. This is incredible. I know that your show does exponentially more views than The View, yet you never got Kamala Harris to come on your program. You never got any big time, huge Democrat names. It's incredible that J.D. Vance goes in and does this. And by the way, it'd just be them against you. And you're very nice, Jesse.
I'm a pussycat.
You're a very nice person. So it's right. Every Democrat would be welcome, I'm sure, to come on your program, but they don't. J.D. Vance going into the Viper's Nest today and really wooing the women. I mean, they applauded for him. He made them laugh. He got memes out of it. He ended up smelling like roses here. And it just showed incredible range. And you just sat next to him during a mock presidential debate with Kamala Harris a couple of hours ago on the 5 with Jessica. How did that go? You were able to see his skills up close.
You know, he was very diplomatic. I learned some things on how to deal with Jessica, maybe not point fingers into her face or raise my voice so much or make personal insults. But he does have a way of disarming people, like what he did with Tampon. Tampon thought he was going to come out and JD was going to be fire and brimstone. But you know what? He was smooth. And it ends up working for him because people end up liking him. And likability, as you know, in politics, it's like the top attribute.
It's a massive attribute. Nobody liked Hillary Clinton. Nobody liked Joe Biden. Nobody likes Kamala Harris. It's fun to see them all go after each other. It'll be amazing to see what happens in 2028. We're just cheering for more UFCs at the White House. We missed you there, Jesse. It was a total bummer. I was looking around. I was like, where's Jesse? But I do have a bit of an acknowledgement because someone asked me today, what would happen if Democrats got the White House? Would they throw a UFC? They wouldn't, because there's no testosterone in the Democrat Party. They'd have to throw a sumo match between Chris Christie and J.B. Pritzker.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't make it. I was at the beach, but you know, I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Did you like that knockout that won that heavyweight? What was the black guy that got his clock cleaned? I turned it off at around 10:40 after that.
It was incredible.
Lewis.
It was a restoration of Western civilization. And yes, it was a restoration of Western civilization, masculinity, bringing the Colosseum back. We love the fighting spirit in America. We love violence, and we love the ability to see the absolute echelons of human performance. And that is what we saw, a return to masculinity in America. It was a beautiful thing, Jesse.
All right. Well, maybe if Gavin wins the White House, there'll be figure skating on the lawn. We'll see. Hopefully that never happens.
Transgender figure skating.
Of course, right. Obviously.
Yeah, right.
Men against women. See you later. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Okay, this is a story that we're sticking on Outnumbered. It has now gone to the new chapter. The U.S. House Oversight Committee will now investigate the mysterious deaths and disappearances of now 11 scientists.
I guess Donald Trump.
They've all been working on high-level space or nuclear power research, and they have either died or mysteriously vanished since 2022, some with some strange similarities, like leaving their homes without phones or wallets. Committee Chairman James Comer says a new coordinated effort is underway to find the answers.
This is something that could be very serious. We know there are many countries around the world that would love to have our knowledge and nuclear capabilities, and these are the people that were at the forefront of it, and they're either dead or missing.
Law enforcement has not drawn a link between or among any of these cases. However, the mystery is still prompting some fresh questions, like this one from our own Peter Doocy.
Do you think it's possible that some foreign spies could be scooping up our scientists to go build something?
That would be the most likely explanation for a lot of this, and that's not out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, there's been activity of foreign countries interfering with whether or bringing over scientists from other countries.
Lisa, you looked at me like you were watching a movie.
That's what this feels like. It feels like we're living out some sort of sci-fi novel here or movie. We're talking about some of the most advanced scientists tied to national security. So in a large population of people, of course, deaths occur. But when you're talking about this smaller pool of highly specialized individuals in a cluster in such a short period of time, it seems a little bit more unusual. I have to read some of this information from Amy Eskridge, who is one of the scientists who allegedly died of a reported self-inflicted gunshot wound. She was on a podcast in 2020, and she was saying that she was going to disclose she had discovered some anti-gravity propulsion information. And apparently that's widely discussed by UFO researchers who have claimed this advanced technology is what allows alien spacecraft to achieve impossible speeds. So she had discovered this. She was working on this anti-gravity, novel foundational work regarding anti-gravity. She was talking about how she was being targeted both psychologically and physically as well as a result of this. She was worried about her life. And then, so she hired a British intelligence officer to help her look into some of these threats against her. And then they allege that an unknown suspect fired a directed energy weapon at her, causing burns across her body using powerful microwaves. So when you read that, I mean, it sounds insane. But yes, that's why my face was like that when you had started this show off.
Lovely as always, but shocked.
Well, yeah, because even just taking into that, what she said on the podcast, it seems insane. But, you know, I don't know. It's pretty crazy stuff. I hope we get to the bottom of it.
Well, and Emily, this is the part that we know that we can talk about via podcasting or reporting. Imagine what we don't know, and that's what the House and the federal government want to get into.
It's such a great point that hopefully, and this is where sort of my faith lies, that all of the people who have the high level top secret clearance abilities are working furiously and feverishly to discover exactly what the commonalities are, because all we see is this pattern, or what seems like a pattern. But you're absolutely right that, I mean, what they're even working on, we can't even articulate, frankly.
Right.
And right as you said that, I actually recently listened to, I always listen to Sean Ryan podcast, but the interview he had with a gentleman named AJ, who was the victim of one of those DEWs, and to hear the immediate and complete, total debilitating effects of one of those weapons that China and Russia have admitted having, that it took us forever to sort of admit to, but that lies in this world. It is quite easy, frankly, which is why it's totally horrifying, to debilitate someone in a way that's through a building, and is by targeted lasers and microwaves and things that, again, I can't even understand. So we should be looking at everything, because that is how we narrow down exactly what happened. And at the heart of this are 11 at least family members that lost their loved ones. So my other question is, what are the families saying? And I've noted that they seem to be pretty reticent, which to me leads more and feeds more into the pattern of they're being told to keep quiet because something.
Well, and think about it. I mean, we don't know how many of these people are truly dead. There are some who have vanished, who are missing right now. So if you are thinking that you can get your family member back, you're going to be even more cautious. The government doesn't have to tell you to keep your mouth shut. You know that going on television is not going to help you get your loved one back, likely. Rosanna?
Well, I'm sure they're worried about their own safety, right?
Double.
And listen, I love a good conspiracy theory. And I think the FBI and all those agencies should investigate. But when you kind of look at all these people that vanished, they're spread across different agencies and institutions working in different specialties like astrophysics and pharmaceuticals. So they don't exactly work
Somewhere in the same lab, though.
Some work in the same lab, but some of them don't work
In the same lab. That's more than a coincidence.
They're not all direct. I love a good conspiracy theory. Let the FBI
I hear what you're
investigate.
saying. I hear what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
totally jumping into this yet.
Well, one of the victims here, and I call them victims because, well, they would be a victim of something because they're not with us right now. But one who's missing went away without a cell phone, without all these items, and he'd been complaining of symptoms of brain fog in the recent days before he vanished. So I hear what you're saying. There could be a whole host of reasons. It doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory to know that you don't all have to work in the same room,
right,
in order for something to be connected. That's why I've pitched a task force at a very high level to take a look at this and cull what all those different authorities and investigators and local communities are pulling together.
Yeah, so shark attacks and ice cream sales are on the same bell curve. They go up at the same time, they come down at the same time. And that sounds like, wow, there must be some connection there. And then you find out sunshine, that's the connection. People buy ice cream when they go to the beach, right? So that time of year is when they spike and they come back down. There's a correlation there. There's a missing element we don't see when we get just that information. That's a part of this. There's a great little diagram here that shows how unconnected they are. And so you have to take that into account. What really notches this up, because most of them, like Nuno Loureiro, I know I'm messing that up, and I am no disrespect whatsoever. That's an MIT professor, had a background in the same sciences, but not necessarily a connection. He was killed by the Brown shooter, and you find out they were classmates together. Now, we could say we don't know near enough about the Brown shooter because I haven't heard much, and that was the entire incident was very odd, the way that certain cameras were turned off. And so there's a lot of those things that create questions. But then you go into the list, and it's really the ones that are missing. And so like Monica Reza went missing on a hike. Her friend saw her wave, and then they never saw her again. They never found the body. You have William Neal, the general, someone you think would have good control over, like he would probably plan out a hike, right? He left everything sitting on the table, went on a hike, which I guess he was known to do, never found again. Then you have, Melissa Cassius. She was an administrative assistant. So she wasn't an engineer or a doctor. She was an administrative assistant. It's disputable how much access she had to what. And she literally just went missing, last seen walking down a road without her keys or anything. Those mysteries are what makes all of this more interesting. And then there are, I think, at least one unsolved murder. So it's the fact, it's not just that they're missing and dead, it's how they went missing and died that people, and we should be looking into it for no other reason than our own national security.
Yeah.
You know what administrative assistants have visibility into, though? Scheduling.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying she
meetings
didn't
did that
know.
person have? Like what calls were they taking
And
from what
emails.
foreign assets?
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Joining me now is Wisconsin Senator Ron.
I love that clip that's about to play, but we need to hear from President Trump, you guys. I know how you felt about him. I don't think he called. I think, I don't know. This is a recap.
Not have a nuclear weapon. That was how I got involved in this. We can't let that happen. So they will not have a nuclear weapon. And other than that, I'd like to ask His Highness to say a few words. And if you want, we can take a couple of questions, please.
Thank you, David, friend.
And I want to say that we are so grateful to have you here and as a President of the United States. And thank you for your support, your commitment to your friend, to your allies. And special thank for your support during the 6-week war. It means a lot to us. And you show us who's the real ally. And without your support, your commitment, Mr. President, not my country only, but the Middle East will be in a different part of the world, a different situation today. So really my pleasure to see you today, Mr. President. And thank you for giving us the time. And there is a lot of things we can talk about for going forward between our two countries, how we can make our relationship even better.
We love it. Thank you, my friend. See, when you're that rich, you can speak that lowly. I was just wondering, can anybody hear that? But when you're so rich, you have such confidence, and you don't have to do any strain to the voice. He's great. So do you have any questions?
What should we expect from the second stage of the negotiations from this memorandum?
I don't know. It's a 60-day period or so. I think it's going to happen fairly on time. We've been both involved. I think they're going to want to get it done. Iran wants to get it done. They have to get back to business. And the relationship is now normalized. So I think it's going to go pretty quickly, Steve. Could go faster. Could take longer too, but it could go faster.
There's so much interest in the text of the document. Why not release the topic?
Oh, I will.
Why not release it?
Well,
before
because
Friday?
I'd like to get a formal setting first before we do that. But I have no problem with that. It's a good document. Here's what it says. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. That's what it says. It won't have one to buy, to develop. They will not have a nuclear weapon. And I would say that's about 99.9% of what I wanted, because we couldn't let that happen. You couldn't let that happen. And they won't have a nuclear weapon. Now, in addition to that, the Strait is going to be open toll-free And it's toll-free beyond the 60 days. It's not, somebody said, oh, it's toll-free for six. No. It's toll-free, period. When it opens permanently, it'll be toll-free. I want to congratulate our Navy because the naval blockade was unbelievable. But I'll not only release it, I'll probably have a press conference and read it to you word by word so that the press covers it accurately. Because it's a very important document. And unlike Obama, who could have destroyed the Middle East with a horrible JCPOA, it is the worst agreement. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. Mine is a wall against a nuclear weapon. I mean, I see these people say, but we already had one. It was worse. He paid a fortune for it. We paid nothing. We don't pay. There was some statement, we're going to spend $300 billion. No, we're not. We're allowed to go and invest if we wanted to someday in the future. We have no obligation whatsoever. It could be that Iran will turn out to be successful when they have oil. But if we left a week ago, just left, before the last two attacks, it would have taken them 20 years to rebuild Iran. So, but I'll go over the document with the media in a couple of days.
Mr. President, a few weeks back, you said you'd like to see other nations join the Abraham Accords, much like the UAE has. Have there been any discussions with Arab leaders about that?
About what?
Joining the Abraham Accords like the UAE has?
Well, I'd love to have them. This is a man who's very advanced. He was early in, and he's done very well with them, the Abraham Accords. No, it's. I think they should happen. The big impediment to the Abraham Accords. We have our original countries, very smart countries. Every one of them. Do you notice that even during that period of conflict, nobody dropped out? Nobody said, "Oh, gee, I'm going to drop out." Nobody. I think they're all going to come in now into the Abraham Accords. The only conflict was a place called Iran. And I understand that, it's a little bit tough when people were afraid of Iran. But I think they're going to all start coming in. Good question, actually.
Mr. President, what do you say to Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham, who is skeptical of the MOU?
Lindsey is skeptical?
Yes.
I'll have to talk to Lindsey. He'll be in big trouble. Lindsey's good. Lindsey's fine. He's not skeptical. He's just fine. Look, this agreement covers something very nicely. We're not paying for anything. We're not doing anything. The markets now are higher than they were when we started. Remember that. The stock market now is 2,500, maybe even more than that, points higher than it was when we said it's pretty amazing. This agreement's about one thing, that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Never, ever, ever. The rest of it's irrelevant, frankly.
Senator Graham also said that an eventual agreement with Iran should be sent to Congress for review. Would you do that?
I never thought of it, but I would. I wouldn't mind. I mean, the Democrats, we call them Democrats because they're dumb people. The Democrats are, well, what I'd like to do is send it to Congress saying you shouldn't approve it, and I'll get it approved. They do whatever I say, they want to do the opposite. It's not working too well for them, by the way. But yeah, I never thought about sending it, never even thought about it, but I will. I will send it to Congress. I like the idea.
On another topic.
I mean, who wouldn't approve it? Let's let them have a nuclear weapon. The Democrats will say, oh, they should have a nuclear weapon. They'll go crazy. I like the idea. Send it to Congress, please. All right.
Mr. President, were you briefed on the attack plans for the UFC event at the White House? There was the FBI thwarted an attack.
I haven't heard about it, no. But I watched the attack that I watched were the fighters. And he saw it too, by the way. He was sitting back home in his beautiful palace and he was watching that. And they were as good a fights as I've ever seen. Right?
The best fight.
The best. They were. That last fight was brutal. Wow. And all of the fights.
The two fights.
It was all good. It was a great evening. It was very different for the White House, but I wish you could have been there. We built an incredible arena. Dana did a great
Is
job.
there going to be another fight next year, Mr. President?
Well, I don't know. I got away with it. That goes 250 years. You know. Maybe in another 50, maybe in 300.
Are you considering an increase on sanctions on Russia and whether to renew those?
Well, soon we'll be able to do that because the oil is now flowing. So we took sanctions off because obviously we're not looking to impede the oil. So we're in a position to do that soon.
Let them lapse.
Yeah,
Okay.
at some point.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding this.
What a nice looking person. Is he from your
See that?
country? Is he from your country?
Absolutely.
No, he's got such a nice way about him. My people are so mean. The handsome guy can put him.
Be careful. Huh?
No, I can put him in a movie right now. Go ahead.
Mr. How can we make sure that Strait of Hormuz is lasting for open for lasting and navigation in the future?
Have a United States with a strong president. It's the only way you can do it, I guess, when you think we have all the agreements you want. The agreements for bad people don't mean anything. Look, we were the ones that blockaded the sheet. They blockaded it. And we then said, well, we blockaded it for them, so they didn't get any oil. You're going to need to have, and this is true with a lot of things, if you have a strong president of the United States, a lot of good things can happen. You know that better than anybody, right?
Absolutely.
You know it better than anybody.
Stability of the Middle East.
Can you talk a little bit more about the plan for the enriched uranium that is in the mountains?
Yeah, we do. We'll take it.
Has Iran said they would welcome the U.S. coming in? How specific?
Iran will be just fine. What's happening is that at an appropriate time, there's no rush at all. We have cameras from space on it. We know everybody that goes there, which is like nobody. The B-2 bombers hit it. The entire mountain collapsed inside it. It's a very tough excavation. Nobody else can do it but us and probably China. They have the equipment. We have the equipment. We're in no rush, but we get it. And when we get it, we'll destroy it.
Is that part
We're not looking to take it. We're looking to destroy it. We have plenty of it.
Tell the Versailles dinner tomorrow night. What prompted you to go to that? The dinner tomorrow night in Versailles.
So, well, I'm a fan of beautiful places. And I was leaving in the afternoon. And then the French president, who happens to be a very nice man, invited me to dinner at Versailles. And Versailles is not a gold leaf. Versailles is the real deal. And I said, I'd like to do it. I mean, you know, all it means is that I get home later in the evening, meaning early in the morning, and I'm not a big sleeper anyway. I'll be in the Oval Office I won't lose any time in the Oval Office. So I have to say this, our country is doing really well. We're doing better than we've ever done as a country. The stock market's the highest, everything's the highest. 401ks are the highest they've ever been by 25%. And we're doing really well. And now you're going to see prices coming down. You know, when I took over, prices were very high. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Prices were high, eggs were high, bacon was high, everything was high. And the first question I got asked, what about affordability? I did a news conference one day after I took over, and these people said, what about affordability? I said, I didn't cause it, but I'm bringing it down. And now with the fuel going way down, you saw yesterday it went down $6, $7. With fuel going down, as goes fuel, so goes everything. And I've always seen that, right? Fuel, you're in a very good business because as goes fuel, so goes everything. Fuel is dropping. It's now in the 70s per barrel. And I think we'll get it down. When I say I was in Iowa and we had great victories in Iowa. And when I left, I noticed in a gas station, $1.85 a gallon. That's where we were. It's a little bit higher generally, but I saw two stations, $1.85, one had $1.91. And, you know, we're going to get around those levels. So very honored. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm not scheduled for another one for another couple minutes.
Happy to see you again. Yeah, we are the most famous couple. Here, behind.
Yes, photograph there. Just here, please, down there, please. Ladies and gentlemen. First downstairs. First here. And now upstairs. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I won't talk to you guys, but I can watch this stuff all day. Look at Melania. Oh, there was some news with Melania. Okay, let me get out of here. I just watch it because I picture myself there. Like I picture myself. Let me stop quickly, you guys. Okay. But that's oh wait a minute, I'm sorry.
Great. Things have changed. Things have changed.
You look 2 seconds
He's gonna meet with the president of Egypt later, you guys. I'll have it for you. I hope. If it's not terribly long, but I'll have it. Okay, let me give you guys this before I get out of here. Melania, we don't talk about Trump accounts a lot. You guys aren't talking about that. And some of the more positive things that's happening in the country. Trump accounts.
First Lady has her own financial initiative. Melania Trump is launching her Fostering the Future accounts. This is a new investment and savings vehicle designated for America's foster children.
Fostering the Future accounts give foster children the same chance for asset ownership and long-term wealth building as every other American child. They turn 18. Foster youth will be able to access the assets they own through Fostering the Future accounts. This will give them a foundation for independence and opportunity.
So this announcement was made earlier today alongside Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. There's been some controversy around the Trump baby accounts because you have to be, they're going to be certain time window which you would be eligible for that. And I'm imagining that the First Lady is focusing on the foster children because they are of different ages, not necessarily babies, and wanting to give them some opportunity too. This is part of her Be Best initiative. Your thoughts on expanding programs like these? We've said on the table, panel here that some of us feel like it's just another handout. As you said, handouts that are created then don't go away, so that people won't take advantage of it if they don't have the literacy tools to be able to do it. There are some issues. On the flip side, it gives people an opportunity to participate in wealth making.
Yeah, no, I think the more children we can teach financial literacy to, the better. But to your point, the Trump savings account, to my knowledge, was partially funded by the Dell grants from that family. So it wasn't like Partially. The taxpayer wasn't necessarily footing the entire bill. I'm not sure who's underwriting these foster care accounts.
It's the government.
I think it's the government. So, I'm a little wary about that. But I will say the foster care community is very underserved. And I think it's nice that she's trying to find a way. But frankly, what no one wants to talk about, it's uncomfortable. Charity, private charity, is always going to be better than a government program. Always. So if there's a way we can somehow leverage that instead of going straight to let's just add a new program, I would prefer that.
But these are just accounts, right? Are they seeded by the government, or are they just vehicles?
$1,000.
Okay, so they're seeded by the government. They're vehicles for these guys to serve. I just think, foster parents are the most unsung heroes in America, and you sacrifice so much, and that is such a tough life. And if we're talking, they're foster kids are the least of these in the country. I mean, if you talk about one space where I think something like this really is worth it, I would vote for this over a heck of a lot of other things.
You go, Dagan. I know you're itching.
Today is not the day I'm going to say anything negative about the children.
Why not?
Why
not?
I just can't.
Well, you know what, though? I will say.
I have been ranting and raving like something stuck up
I think
all show.
Look,
and I'm just not. The foster community foster children are wildly underserved.
Yes.
The people who commit their lives to doing that there's a special place on high for those parents.
That's a big amen.
Mm-hmm. All right.
A lot of people have been asking to see. We've done a lot of work.
I love that. Can you guys handle one more? Can you handle one more before I go? And then I'll let you go to bed because I kept you over 2 hours. Well, you can go to bed anyway, but let me just do a short recap and then we're good. Let's see what I do with it. Is that casino? Hang on, you guys. I said one more, but there's really.
Army Special Forces and president of WorldStrat. Jim, the text of the deal, you're going to see it. Do you think there's going to be any surprises?
I love a 1.5-page document for something as important as this. That's beautiful. No, listen to what he has actually said. The whole point was to make sure they can't have a nuclear weapon. But now everyone's going to focus on all of the minutia. Now, they already have no way to control any of the regional places that they were causing damage before. They have no military to cause people difficulties. They need to stop funding their proxies. That's one thing that's going to come up later. But the bigger issue is he has created a new Middle East. The first trip he took overseas was to see the Saudis, Emiratis, and Qataris and lay this out for them. We're going to neuter Iran. You're going to help. And he also now has added in Turkey. He's got Tom Barrack talking to Erdogan and saying, you're going to control Syria. You're going to help with Iraq. And those are going to provide a counterweight to make sure Iran can't do things either. So everybody is going to do economic deals. Everyone's going to do security deals. And they're going to stop letting Iran be the one making the way the entire region reacts be their game. It's now our game.
And he kind of slapped Netanyahu around, if you caught that, with the Lebanon deal. What was that all about?
I think that's tied to Tom Barrack, who's Lebanese, and the idea that we don't want to have to be the policemen over there, and we don't even want the Israelis to have to be the policemen over there. So he's pushing for other regional forces, including Turkey, and now, like I said, including the Gulf states, to push other people around as opposed to being pushed around. And I think that's the big change. There are a lot of carrots offered, but the sticks are still there. And if the Iranians don't play, if they don't stop, then the economic pain comes, and if need be, the real pain comes. And that's all laid out.
JD has kind of emerged over the last couple of weeks as a real voice in getting this deal done. What do you make of that?
I think he all along was the one who was pushing for a deal before a war. It's well known. He was not the biggest fan of military action, but he backs the president because he works for the president. Now that the opportunity to turn all of that successful military activity, and it was immensely successful, into a regional security and economic package is right in his wheelhouse, and he's taken advantage of it. I think it's great to see him be someone who now is finishing the end game of this. Pete Hegseth can't make a deal to do the economic and security arrangements for everyone in the region. J.D. Vance can, and he's doing it.
The more I think about the dust buried so deep and having it been inaccessible to the Iranians, it's almost like we don't even need to go down and get it and remove it. We could just sit up there, watch it from space, and call it a day.
It's an option. I think ideally everyone would like to know it's been destroyed, it's been neutralized, all of that. But the point is, if we have the inspections that this deal will have to include to ensure that Iran is not doing its usual dirty dealing, then it doesn't matter. Like you said, if they don't have the ability to rebuild a nuclear program or the access to any of that enriched uranium, who cares? Let it, sink back into the earth and become, a problem for someone 1,000 years from now.
When you see Trump over there with the G7, these guys didn't help. They couldn't help. They wouldn't help. He's going over there and saying, yeah, it'll be over Friday. Here's your oil. We didn't need it, but here it is. What kind of power is that?
There is an awful lot of ring kissing going on, isn't there? Ring and other places. No, it's fun to watch, okay? They wanted to talk smack. They wanted to say, oh, this is going poorly. It's horrible. America lost to Iran. That was always such a joke. Everybody else follows our lead, and they don't have to like it, and they don't like it. But nobody can get things done like the United States of America. And if you have a president like Donald Trump willing to take the huge political risk he did to do this, and now seeing the fruits of that come true, okay, they're going to get in line, and they're going to say, well, yeah, we'd like to get on board the Trump train now. And sure, get on board. You're just going to start from the back.
All right, and cap it off with a beautiful dinner at Versailles. What a life. Jim, great to talk to you as always. Thank you.
There you have it, you guys. That's crazy. Are we still friends, you guys? That was a lot. But I'm praying for our country. I'm praying for Donald Trump. I don't know. I'll give you guys one more and then I'm gonna go sleep. Just because I was watching this as you guys were chatting.
The Strait of Hormuz fully reopening this Friday.
It all comes as Israel keeps pressure on Hezbollah in Lebanon, saying terrorist operatives still pose an immediate threat to Israeli forces in the region. But the commander-in-chief is hopeful he can straighten all this out. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst back live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. As President Trump attends the G7, the world is waiting for the detailed text of the Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran. Senior U.S. officials said yesterday on a briefing that in the next 24 to 48 hours, the public would get to see new insight into what is actually in the agreement. One of those officials explained the deal is performance-based, meaning Iran wouldn't benefit from sanctions relief unless they adhere to their end of the deal. This means the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and entering into detailed discussions to dismantle their nuclear program. Overnight, Vice President J.D. Vance was on Hannity and explained more about how the goal is to give Iran a chance to integrate into the world economy.
the agreement says they are not getting a single dime of American money. That's just not what this is. What the agreement does say, Sean, is again, if the Iranians behave, and if there are sanctions relief, and if the Iranians are integrated into the world economy, we would invite other countries, not us, but other countries to invest in their country. That's fine, but only if they comply with the terms of the agreement.
We know that the agreement calls for a ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon. U.S. officials say Israel will be allowed to respond if attacked by Iran-backed Hezbollah. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the fight is not over.
We saved the state of Israel from annihilation. But I tell you, citizens of Israel, the struggle is not over. We will have to continue standing guard, continue being strong and determined to defend ourselves as necessary.
With the Israelis on high alert, some here have expressed distaste with the agreement, worried it won't adequately address Iran's desire for a nuclear program. President Trump spoke upon arriving at the G7, saying this about Iran's former path to a nuclear weapon.
The main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. They fully agreed to that with strong policing powers, and they won't have a nuclear weapon, which is what it was all about, because they probably would have used it if they had it. So we had two big moments when they terminated the JCPOA, that was the Obama deal, the Barack Hussein Obama deal. And when I terminated that, it was very important because it was a road to a nuclear weapon.
As journalists, we must continue to ask difficult questions about this agreement. One of those questions is what if? What if the Iranians are unwilling to make those concessions at the negotiating table as it relates to their nuclear program?
Yeah,
guys,
it's a great question, and no doubt one that's going to come up at this G7 summit today and into tomorrow. And we are awaiting President Trump's meeting, Trey, with the Emir of Qatar. Could happen any minute now. But when it comes to Qatar, it's a complicated country to dive into and think about because they have been a great mediator in all of this. But at the same time, they were also a safe haven for top Hamas leaders for a while. So how should we view Qatar as a player in all of this?
Yeah, the Qataris played a critical role in getting this deal across the finish line. A diplomat familiar with the situation told Fox News the negotiating team from Qatar was in Tehran ultimately when this deal was reached. And they have acted as a backdoor intermediary for the United States to work on some of the finer details. I do want to give you some new information, though, that we're getting from Iran's foreign minister, who spoke from Tehran just in the last 2 hours. And he said this as it relates to the issue of Lebanon in this agreement.
And definitely any military attack by the Zionist regime against Lebanon from this point forward, as well as the continued occupation of Lebanese territory from this point forward, will be considered by us a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding.
So this is really important because the Iranian foreign minister says that any attack in Lebanon will be considered a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night indicated that the Israelis will continue to operate against Hezbollah, an Iran-backed group that is continuing to fire drones and rockets into Israel. And even U.S. officials yesterday indicated the Israelis will have the ability to respond against Hezbollah if their civilians come under attack. And so this could be a major sticking point in this agreement. Once again, the Iranians are trying to tie the situation in Lebanon to the broader agreement with the United States. Guys?
And it all begs the question, will it hold? What will hold? What happens over the course of the next week and beyond? Trey Yingst, thank you. Let's bring in former Deputy National Security Advisor and Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security, Victoria Coates. Trey just gave a tremendous backdrop on all the facts and what is happening and the interplay behind the scenes. But President Trump is at the G7 today. He's got to sell this deal to his fellow leaders there. What does he do to sell this? How should he sell the Iran deal to the G7?
Well, good to see you, Todd and Carly. I mean, I think it's very rich to have the Iranian foreign minister talking about
Lebanese sovereignty, when that's exactly what Iran is violating right now. I mean, Lebanon is a sovereign country, indeed, and they are trying to reach a deal with Israel, which Iran is trying to disrupt. And so they're just being utterly illogical here in how they're approaching Lebanon. So that is a huge problem, I think, going forward. Now, in terms of selling the deal, I mean, I don't think President Trump needs to do much. The Europeans and the Japanese who are present at this G7 are all pretty desperate to get the Strait of Hormuz open. That's much more important to them than it is to us. So I think they are all very, very happy that we've reached this kind of a deal, that they're going to start to get the free flows of energy out of the Gulf on which they depend. And so I don't think he's going to have to sell it very much. I think they're just going to need to get to the point where hopefully the Europeans and the Japanese can support this thing and encourage the Iranians to be reasonable and implement it.
Yeah, and Victoria, going back to Lebanon for a minute, because there is this effort by Secretary of State Marco Rubio to get the Israelis and Lebanese governments to normalize ties, which would ultimately disarm Hezbollah. That would be the goal. But when you hear the Iranian foreign minister say something like any attack in Lebanon would be a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding, and then you have Israel saying we are not going to, we're not going to give up our ground in Lebanon. We're not going to remove troops. We're going to keep going if we are attacked. And the president also acknowledging that that is the realistic thing that would need to happen. What does the Lebanon element and the Hezbollah element mean going forward when it comes to this overall memorandum?
Well, I think the burden is going to have to be on the Iranians, Carly, to help rein in Hezbollah, because, I mean, Hezbollah is firing thousands of drones and rockets at Israel. So this isn't Israel attacking Hezbollah. This is Hezbollah attacking Israel and Israel responding. So if Iran doesn't want Hezbollah to be attacked, they have to have them stop firing at Israel. I mean, it's a very simple equation, but they don't seem to be grasping it. And, I think it is very important, though, as we look at that area, to think about how isolated Hezbollah now is. We no longer have that land bridge that Iran was using in the form of Syria to get material and money into Lebanon to finance and supply Hezbollah. That's gone. Syria is now the enemy of Iran. And then you also have, I wouldn't call it a strong government of Lebanon, but at least, something that's in Beirut that wants to deal with Israel, that wants to come to an arrangement with the Jewish state, get to a place of peace. The irritant in that is Hezbollah. So, that isolation of Hezbollah is new. It is an opportunity. So I think Israel needs to be able to defend itself. Obviously, the president has said that is their clear right, and do what they need to do to control Hezbollah. But as I said up top, that burden has to be on Iran as well, if they actually want there to be some kind of peaceful resolution to this.
All this with the G7 in the background, in the foreground in our show. We've been covering it for the last hour and a half. Victoria Coates, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest.
You guys so much for hanging out with me. If I missed your comment and you were trying to reach me, leave it on my community wall. I go through all of my messages, and I'm waiting for oh geez, I need to go to bed. I'm looking a mess. I'm waiting for President Trump to meet with the president of Egypt, and I will cover that for you later if I can. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day. I'm praying for the country, and I'm praying for all of you. Talk soon, my friends. Bye-bye. You're welcome, Stewie Girl. Who's Stewie Girl? T. Tapra, thank you for hanging out. Damage, thank you. Doc and Claude, thank you guys for my chat. Damage, also my chat. Stewie Girl, hopefully you will help me out soon. I love Fox News. I come back. Okay, Aslam, I'll see you guys later. Thank you guys. God bless you.